like sweetheart, like Valentine's Day dance. We are also planning a assembly for one of our biggest Compass traditions. It used to be called Mr. Compass, but we've recently changed it to Compass Royalty. It's where we have a bunch of students apply to compete to be Compass Royalty. So we're currently planning that. A couple things for the seniors that we've been really busy working on is we started our mock congress on Monday, where we get to write our own bills. Our bills go through committee, and now we're in Congress voting on bills. Another thing is that we finished the first round of our senior capstone project. It's like a senior project, it just is a lot longer and we have a lot more requirements. So we can either decide to extend the project further or propose to start a new one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Emerson High School. Okay, that takes us to our celebrations.
All right, great. We have a couple of really great celebrations tonight. The first one is Dora Erickson. Kelly, would you like to help us through?
Mr. Hunsaker and Jesse Prince.
Welcome.
Thank you. We are very excited to celebrate our school tonight. There's been lots of very positive things. One of the biggest things that has changed in our school lately, at the end of last year, we recognized the need to revamp our PBIS systems in our school. We spent some time recreating those, and this year we rolled them out. As part of that, each of the kids are able to earn some cup cash, which they then exchange for a classroom party.
Sorry, can I interrupt you? I have no idea, and I'm not the only one I found out knows what PBIS is.
So sorry. PBIS is our positive behavior intervention supports.
Okay.
They are set up to recognize the positive things that our kids are doing and reinforce those expectations throughout the school. As kids follow those expectations in the various areas of our school, they're able to earn hub cash from different members who are not their teacher and exchange them for classroom parties. So they're working as a school or as a classroom to earn those. And at this point in the year, all of our classrooms have earned a classroom party, and some are even on to their second or third, just in the various ways that they are following expectations through the building. So we were very excited about that. The other celebration we wanted to share tonight was our community partners coming together to support the families in our school. Our school is has some very significant needs. Over Thanksgiving, we were able to provide over 40 boxes of food to some of our neediest families. This Christmas, that number has risen to over 50. We've also been able to help over 70 children with some Christmas gifts for the season. And these are all coming from various donors. Some of them are families in our school who are taking on other families in our school. Some of them are the grandchildren of Dora Erickson, who our school is named after. Some of them are community businesses and other people who are just looking to help out.
Great, wonderful. Thank you.
So much.
Is
that all?
Skyline High School.
Well, I know that. Okay. All right. So next up is Skyline High School. I don't know who's presenting, if that's Josh or
Mr.
Greg.
Newell and
Oh.
Hi, I'm Greg Basic, Athletic Director at Skyline. Josh Newell, that's Josh. Madam Chair, Dr. Shank, administrators, trustees, thank you for this opportunity to celebrate with us 3 teams at Skyline this year who experienced the thrill of a state championship. So we'd like to recognize them tonight. We appreciate your continued support of athletic programs, as we know that they're an extension of the classroom, whether it's in the pool, cross-country course, or on the field. So the coaches that you're going to hear from tonight are dedicated educators, and we're very proud of them and really appreciate the way they represent our school and our district and our community. We've invited Gray Augustus from the cross-country team. He's our head assistant coach to present to you about the amazing season that the Skyline cross-country team had. Following him, we have asked Coach Scott Berger to present about the Grizzly football team. And then finally, we will hear from Christine Dustin from the swim team. So, great.
Good evening, board. Like you were saying, I'm a great assistant cross country coach. I actually brought our lead boys athlete, Aiden Hardy, with me tonight, so that initially you could hear it from an athlete's mouth, and then I'll follow up.
Thank you, Coach Gray. So, as he said, my name is Aiden Hardy. I am one of the Skyline's cross-country team captains. Our coaches think we're goofy, but when it comes to race day, we're anything but that. One of the reasons we run so well is because we're all super close friends, and we've been that way all through high school. As a team this year, our boys took third and our girls took second at state. Following that, as for myself, this year I improved drastically. I went from being predicted to take 19th at state to finishing 13th. For this state race, I never taken top 50 before. Along with these hard placements, my times improved as well. Starting the season, I was at a mediocre 18:05 5K, but when I finished the season at state, I finished with a 15:51. It's about 2 minutes, 10 seconds PR, which is pretty great in cross country. Not only did these higher placements and fast times help me in high school, but they helped me beyond high school as well. These times put me on the map for college running, for college running scholarships, and by spring I'll have paid one to further my running career. My dreams of running in college will all come true, thanks to my coaches and my running buddies. Thank you for your time.
So to expand on what Aiden's saying, and one of the reasons that he's such a great example is that improvement gap. So this year we had one of the largest teams we've had. It's a 62 athlete team, 36 boys, 26 girls, and with the largest freshman team we've ever seen of 21 freshmen this year. So we grew in numbers. We're extremely excited for that. We put a big focus on always trying to qualify a team for state. We always want to do well at state, but really our initial goal for these young athletes is for them to see improvement throughout the season. This year we had a good opportunity down at districts as our first race and our last race here at home before state was on the same course. So we were able to see if we were able to improve those athletes. We had all 62 athletes see improved times from the start of the season to the end of the season. We had all the 3 athletes this year see improved times from their seasons last year that we had them. With the largest improvement from start of the season to the end of the season being 9 minutes over 3 minutes. So that to us means that we're doing what we're supposed to, and we're taking those athletes and we're improving them as a team, not just as a top squad. Other extremely exciting celebrations for us to have this year is we have a 3.75 GPA average on the team. These guys, as Aiden mentioned, have a really close-knit group of friends. They hold themselves accountable. They don't let them fall behind in studies. You'll commonly see them reading and studying and doing homework on the buses at meets. And so it's created a really good atmosphere for even some of the struggling students who come in as they see success growing through that piece. We, as one of our traditions, we keep a record book on different courses and times. We have a record book that dates back to 1985. We've been fortunate to have some long tenured coaches. In that record book, to give you kind of perspective of this team this year versus some of our other teams, we had 20 athletes place times into those top 50 times in that record book just from this year. We also saw the boys' fastest freshman time ever recorded at Skyline, and then we also had our repeat state champion Neela Roberts, who was the first ever athlete to qualify for the national race, which took place last weekend, where she placed 23rd. So overall, we're an extremely happy team. We have some big goals set for track. And you can believe it, these kids are already out. So, look forward to seeing you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Scott Berger. I'm the head football coach at Skyline High School. I want to start out by thanking my assistant coaches, my administration, the faculty, and especially the players. We couldn't do it without the players. We are fortunate enough that this was our third straight year of being state champions, and 5 of the last 7 years. Some of the highlights, the new field out at Rapston, beautiful to play on. That first win against Highland was huge. Another big win for us was the game against Thunder Ridge. My son is coach at Thunder Ridge. I had to win that first game, or I never would have heard the end of it. And so that was a big highlight for us. The game against the Tigers this year, it was, every time you play that game, it's special, and especially on the new field. And then our playoffs. I mean, we started out and played 4 playoff games and couldn't have asked for anything better. As far as we got a little revenge against Bonneville, who had defeated us 2 weeks earlier. We defeated Twin Falls. We played a very good Sandpoint team in the semifinals, and then Bishop Kelly. They were 12-0, and we were fortunate enough to win the game. And we couldn't do it without all of the support that we have in the West Side, and just proud to be a Grizzly. So thank you very much.
I'm Christine Duffin. I'm the head swim coach at Skyline High School of the girls and the boys team. This year we had an awesome season. Our boys team won state, which is, I guess, is why I'm here right now. So these boys really, we had the exact same team we've had the past years go to state, but we just had amazing improvement and effort from all these kids. I brought our senior, that's my son, but I brought him Gavin here. He was our only freshman when he started 4 years ago, and then he's been here the whole time and building the team. He has won state all 4 years and his events. But what we really saw this year was all the teams, the kids really improve. The exact same boys that swam last year and got 4th place, that exact same relay won this year. And, we beat Bishop Kelly, which was a thrill, just like for football. So they're kind of the powerhouse here in swimming, and so we have a lot of tough conditions here. We don't have a pool, as we all know, but we all share the pool here in town and share that space with IF and Thunder and Hillcrest and Bonneville and Rigby and everyone. So we all make it work, and it's just been a great attitude from all the kids this year, and it was great to see them. I started this pretty early on that they could probably do it this year. I didn't kind of want them to know that, and then they need to do it this year at state, and they actually won by quite a lot. We had 8 boys make state, 6 of them placed in the 6 of them medaled, actually 7 of them medaled state. A lot of relays placing at state, and a lot of kids making the top 6 in the individual events, which is what medals. So yeah, lots to see.
I don't know. I was supposed to prepare anything, so no, I don't have anything. This is just the best year of Skyline swimming probably ever. Definitely the best year since I've been there. It's just been growing every single year. We've slowly been climbing up the ranks. Like when I was a freshman, we were not that good. It was not that good. But now I wouldn't call us an underdog because I kind of thought we could win the whole time. But I'd say everyone else is definitely considering us an underdog at state, and then we pulled it off. So yeah.
You're a state record holder too, right?
I am. 4 times.
4 times.
Yeah.
But we had other boys win too, and a lot of 3rd places too. And stuff. So
Yeah, lots of points for it.
a lot of people came together, and Gavin's our only senior, so pretty much we good. almost the same team next year.
Yeah.
You going on to swim in college somewhere?
Yeah, I want to swim at the Naval Academy.
Good for you.
Nice, right?
Yeah.
Proud mama.
Thank you, Skyline. District pride, citywide, right? Okay. Right, superintendent's report.
I'm going to yield my time to Angela when the time comes to talk about finance. So we have representatives from Holly Troxel, Nick Miller is with us tonight, and Eric Erringer from Piper Sandler. So
They're coming up in just a little
just a
bit.
bit, yeah.
Okay, so high reliability school report. Start with Edgemont.
Yeah.
Wade,
Wade Levitt, the principal, the virtual.
Awesome,
welcome.
thank you. Yeah, so I'm Wade Levitt, principal of Edgemont Elementary. Just for a
Hold on,
little bit
what?
of background, I was a school counselor there for a few years. Last year I was an assistant at Linden Park, and then it's like going back for me. And so a lot of my focus with HRS and being back in the building as the principal has been focusing and staying focused on HRS and what Dave Webster did as the principal. So a couple of celebrations and shout outs. The first one is definitely to the students. Edgemont is a special place, and that's why I wanted to go back. The students are amazing, the parents are amazing, they raise their children in a very good way, that they are proud to be an Edgemont Eagle. And our staff as well is a very veteran staff. We have a lot of teachers that have been at Edgemont for a very long time. And so we have a very strong culture and have for a long time. And so going in as the new principal, I didn't want to change any of those amazing things about Edgemont, but wanted to add to it. And so we did certify in level 1 last year. And so my main focus this year was staying at that level 1, but let's hope to see if a new principal can come and do the same things. I had very big shoes to fill. Dave Webster is an amazing principal. So the focus areas that came in the first little bit to the staff was one, my big thing was school safety, that I could see a couple of areas that safety was lacking in our building. And one of them, and here's a picture up here, the windows going into our gym has always been a security issue for me. That I'm always nervous that don't love to show the public that we've got all of our students sitting in the cafeteria and an assembly with those windows just looking out. And so we were able to use our funds to purchase a window wrap that was created, and it's a 70-30 vinyl window wrap, so you can see out, you can't see in. And that's been an awesome new addition for that safety piece for our school. The second thing, area of focus has been on what I call being the one. At the very beginning of our school year, I asked teachers to remember back to their elementary years. And in my opinion, I think we remembered the teachers we absolutely love or the teachers we absolutely hated. And so I encouraged my staff to be the one, to be the best that you can be, that when the students leave Edgemont, they remember how awesome their second grade teacher was or how awesome the third grade teacher was. And so we placed a lot of focus on being the one. Living above the line and teaching above the line has been our big focus. That, with our culture, has helped us to step into some level 2 work as well. This third area of focus was team unity. We say at Edgemont that we're a team, that we work together as a staff. We work together in our classrooms with team unity. And so one of the changes that we made this year was we started implementing morning meetings, which is a structured focus on starting the day off. But instead of calling them morning meetings, we call them a team huddle. So every teacher huddles up with their kids, talks about what the expectations are for the day, how they can be focused on learning for that day, setting goals for the day or for the week that they're going to be working on as a team, working together. We use that same analogy at school-wide. Once a month we have faculty team huddle, where we huddle up and we talk about safety principles, and those are just quick 15-minute huddles and a little announcements, so they're much shorter than our normal faculty meeting. But the analogy of always huddling up, I start every morning with it's time to huddle up for our morning announcements, and I think that's really important because we're a team. And so those are some areas that we're continuing, those components that we're still focusing on, that's level 1 focus. But some of the level 2 focus areas, last spring when I was the assistant principal at Linden Park, myself and Kevin Kelly had the chance, and Becky and Andrea, we went to Denver and to a level 2 conference with Tina Bogren from HRS. And some of the takeaways that I got from that conference that I wanted to bring back and we've implemented this year is social emotional strength of our teachers. Part of that is with my background in counseling, that I wanted to make sure that our teachers are on their A game, that they have to be socially and emotionally strong before they start teaching academic work for our kids. And so we've incorporated some book studies of some work on self-care for teachers, as well as some work from Brene Brown of understanding your emotions and where you can strengthen yourself as an individual and as a teacher. A second area that we focused on is I wanted to get to know my faculty as learners. I knew them very well as coworkers in the past, but we started having what I called life learner conferences with teachers. That we wanted to instill in our teachers that they are life learners, that they're always looking for ways to improve and fine tune their craft as a teacher. And if they are a life learner, we can instill in our kids to be life learners as well. And that's been a big focus in this school year. And the last piece of level 2 that we've done is really focus on that model of instruction of the new art and science of teaching. And our number 1 element that we've been focusing on so far is element 32, which is motivating and inspiring students. And in my monthly walkthroughs as I go class to class, I'm looking for ways that our teachers are motivating and inspiring kids and giving them feedback on ways that we can continue to be the one for those kids in the classroom. We did take a survey on our level 2 work, and one of the things that our next step of focusing on is establishing a system for instructional rounds. Our teachers want to see each other teach so that they can find ways to be better teachers as well. So school goals, we want to improve 5% in our math scores, 5% in our ELA scores. And the way that we're going to do that is focusing on those universal screeners that we have in our district with iReady and iStation, because those are the things that we can control. We can control how much time we're spending on iReady, focusing on math. We can control how much our students are spending on iStation, focusing on their reading and writing. And the last social emotional piece that we've been focusing on is a positive 3-to-1 ratio of students having positive interaction with the office staff. So we have our character tickets, and our goal has been 3-to-1, that we are praising kids more than they're coming to the office for an office referral. Every month of the school year, we have had well above that 3-to-1 ratio that kids get a chance to come to the office and be acknowledged for their positive behaviors. So when those negative behaviors come up, it's not as big of an issue, because they feel comfortable maybe interacting with the principal or teachers and counselors. So that is Edgemont as fast as I could go. Any questions?
Do you have a time frame for level 2?
Time frame, we've talked in our leadership meeting next year. I'd like to come in and make sure we're strong, still level 1, and continue to work. Hopefully by next year is our plan.
Beginning of the year and end of the year?
Kind of figuring that out as a team. We felt very comfortable with that, but we definitely want to kind of walk our way into that.
Yep.
Next year.
Yeah, how, since you're kind of I think the first person to present that's come into a school since we've really implemented HRS, how has that transition been?
For me, it's been good because we started HRS when I was there as a counselor and I was on the leadership team, so I knew the goals and what was going on. I got to step over to Linden Park and see their initiatives and what they were doing, and see things through a different lens, and then bring some of that back and kind of merge. So I feel like when you look at HRS now, we're in Edgemont/Linden Park just because that's the lens that I've seen. So it has been very helpful. So
I have a question
about the positive behavior referrals.
Yeah.
So are you looking at it from an overall standpoint of we get 3 times as many character tickets overall? And for every one referral? Or are you looking at for the individual students? Because I could see a situation where you have some kids who always get the character tickets and some kids always get their office referrals. And so I'm kind of wondering which one you've got going.
Both.
Both.
So overall is what we're always looking at. The easiest way to total it up is how many tickets did we give out as a faculty versus how many referrals do I have at my desk. But then we track it on a Google form, so we can pull individual kiddos and say, oh, this kiddo has multiple office referrals. How many times have we praised him or her? And we're able to track that and keep that the same as well. So that's it. We have repeat offenders kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Wade.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Ethel Boyce. We have Amanda Hall, principal, and Trustee Bills, the assistant principal.
Thank you guys for having me present today and present about Ethel Boyce. I'm Amanda Hall, I'm the principal, and this is Tess Fish, assistant principal. Wait for the slide. Oh, that's the last slide.
What is?
Yep.
There.
There you go. Next, so some exciting things, you can go to the next slide. Some celebrations for us. We certified in June 2022 with HRS level 1, so we're excited about that. We've implemented our Ethel Boyce instructional model this school year, moving us into HRS level 2, and that's our focus this year. That Ethel Boyce is focusing on defining what that instructional model looks like at Ethel Boyce and defining the elements within the new art and science teaching. So we've identified that. We've presented as a full faculty what our instructional model looks like. So we're excited about that. We've doubled our PTO organization and parent involvement this year, so we're excited about some events that are coming up at Ethel Boyce. We have an event scheduled in January that is focusing on educating parents regarding literacy and math, and then we also have one in Vegas as well, so we're excited about that. Our scores in iStation and iReady increased this past month. That's our universal screeners for math and reading, so we're excited this month that they've gone up and will continue to gain growth within that area. Our behavior challenges have decreased this month, so excited about that. And then we're looking into a co-teaching model to implement into our classrooms, targeting our English learner population. At the Boys, we have the highest population of English language learners out of all the elementary schools, and so we're really focusing on growth within that population and how we're structuring our instructional model to really target that population. So we're seeing growth within the ELL population. This is what the students think about at the Boys. Doesn't sound like this on my computer. Mine sounds great.
I love the teachers at the best. I like the teachers in the place because they're kind of like I like the boys because when I struggle, they always help me to what to make it. I like the food in the boys. Boys because they're good friends. I like the teachers here because they are really kind of thoughtful. I like Lisa's and friends at the boys. I like learning math and computer at the boys. I like one counting. One counting. I like to read at the boys. I like to writing. Math. I like the lunchroom. My favorite is to play go somewhere with my friends. I play in the snow. My favorite place is thing about
Sorry.
So those are the things that students like about the Boys. The prompt I gave them is to say anything you like, so that was the only prompt. Most of them, you couldn't hear kind of in and out, but a lot of them identified the teachers at Ethel Boys, and I just want to back that up. In regards to our vision, one of our big beliefs at Ethel Boys is a shared leadership vision, and that means that every faculty member has a voice within the leadership within our school. I want to shout out to some of our leadership team who came tonight to have a voice and just listen to the board meeting because we're a week school and we focus on me all the time. So that's a vision that we have with that. Our areas of focus is focusing and increasing our number of students who are proficient in reading, writing, and math, and I'll show you some numbers in just a minute with that. And then maintaining a safe and collaborative school culture through the work of our HRS level 1, maintaining that culture. Certifying in HRS level 2. Our goal is certified by May 2024. We're on a good path right now in regards to our instructional model, and we'll start looking at instructional rounds this spring to continue with that framework. And then focusing again on growth with our English language learner population and with our special needs population as well is our areas of focus. And then our school goals, if you look on the right there, last year for our kindergarten IRI, we were at 72% proficient in May. This year, our goal is 80% proficient. For first grade, we ended at 63%. We have a goal of 70% proficient. Second grade, we're at 64%. Our goal is 70%. And then third grade, we're at 69%. Our goal is 72% with that. And then in fourth grade, with our ELA scores, we ended up 37%. I don't know what the background is.
Yeah. We need to mute.
School goals is all academic growth.
Sorry, can you just mute this a minute?
Just wait one minute.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, I think he did it.
Nope. You didn't unmute.
I don't have any volume.
There we go. Yeah, go ahead.
So our school goal
Thank
this year is for every student to make academic growth and reading literacy by at least 5%, as you kind of saw, you can probably hear some of the scores that were up there. And then also just increasing our social emotional work with students to be happy, functional citizens within our community. Our school goals for this year. Thank you guys for all your support. Do you guys have any questions?
Did I see on a graphic May of 2024 is when you were hoping to be level 2 certified?
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Bush is our next school to present. Becky Hogenkamp.
I'm Becky Hogenkamp. I'm the principal at A.H. Bush. I don't have any videos, so I won't mess anything up. So our celebrations this year, we had a goal to increase our family night participation by 15% over our family. We have a family night once a month, and we have met that goal already. We actually in December had 160 people come out to our family night. We just do it in our cafeteria. We serve dinner. We do different activities and stuff, and they all tend to be focused around some academic piece to support parents in supporting their students. We were able to reestablish our PTO this year with the help of some of our teachers, really recruiting some of those parents. So it's really nice to have that support again from the teachers and from parents. We are going to submit our HRS level 1 Moodle on Friday. So we're just finishing up some final touches. So hopefully it'll just be a few months before we're certified level 1. And then we have seen a decrease in our behaviors over the last 2 months. We have begun using what's called a reset room. So it's a place where students can go, like instead of, like if they're feeling like they're getting anxious or upset, they're gonna blow up in class. Instead, they can go to this room, and it's kind of a quiet place, and it's has a staff member in there, and they work through like strategies on how to deal with those emotions and how to handle that stuff. So I think that we're seeing some positives from that, hoping we can help our students learn to better regulate their emotions. And then we just completed our first 6-week session of SOAR, which is our after-school program. It's a partnership with United Way, and it gives 4th through 6th grade students a place to go. They do a lot of like cooking, they made a bunch of blankets and they donated them to the police department, and to the fire department, so if there's kids that need help, and so they do different activities like that. And it just is a lot of adults, and, you know, so the ratio of adults to kids is pretty small, so that it's able to give the students an opportunity to form some of those relationships with positive adults in their lives. And then our areas of focus this year, we have begun our work on level 2. We're really going to focus on that starting in January, looking at the new art and science of teaching. We're doing some PD on that. We are wanting to increase our student achievement in math and reading, and then also have some growth in our ELL population as well. That population for us has been pretty stagnant in their growth, and so we've made a few changes to our ELL supports within our building. And then maintaining the safe and collaborative environment for all stakeholders, so really maintaining that HRS level 1. So our school goals, so for our kindergarten at the end of last year, they were 50% proficient. So our goal, I did the same process with our staff as we did at our retreat at the beginning of the year. So we went through that process. We went through about setting the goals and doing all of that. And so our teachers did that and set their goals that we put into our continuous improvement plan. So our kindergarten teachers felt like they really could hit that 70% mark by the end of the year, and they're working really hard at that. So first grade, you can see that they said 55%, and they were 54% last year. But it's really the students. If you look the year before, so they were 50% proficient, and so they're wanting to be 55% proficient. We have a couple of factors that play into our first grade this year versus last year that are a little bit different. We do have 3 first grades, and we were trying to keep those classes really small, but we have ended up with almost 20 overflow students from different schools, which just causes some, it's not bad. I'm glad that we can take them in and have a place for them, but it's not, they have a hard time with the social part because they're not with kids from their community. And so it's not kids that they get to go home and play with because they're not their neighbors. And so we're having some social struggles in first grade. Second grade, so the students that are in second grade this year were 54% proficient last year. The teachers want to get that up to 60%, and then second grade is wanting to get up to 75%. Third. So this is our ISAP, math, and ELA. And so if you follow the color code, the students in third grade were 17% proficient in math. So the fourth grade teachers want to get that kids up to 25% proficient. Then you can just kind of see how that goes. And then ELA is the same way. Follow the colors, it gives you the same groups of kids. So the teachers used the proficiency of what the students were at the end of last year to set their goal for the end of this year. Our current HSR work, so we will start the official work of level 2 in January. Our level 2 stakeholder survey will be done by January 18th. And the HRS team, faculty and staff will create a timeline of our level 2 certification plan by January 31st. So once we get those survey results and see where we're at, what areas of growth are identified, we can determine how long we think that's going to take us. So we'll set that goal by January 31st. And then the administrators, teachers, and staff will all set their instructional goal based on the new art and science of teaching by February 3rd.
Great.
Well done, Bush.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so Dr. Shank and I have asked Eric and Nick to come, and we would like to discuss options moving forward. We've also put in the packet the ballot for the supplemental levy. That's just the levy we currently have that needs to be renewed in the spring.
In the board packet?
Oh, Maybe.
in our paper packet?
I think it's,
No, I think Jess just attached it in the minutes. I only sent it to her.
No, she just sent it to me right before the meeting. It's
Yeah,
not
so it'll
available
be in there
yet.
later, but you're not voting on it today. It's just for reviewing for January.
you can send a copy and email
Yes.
last Friday.
And real fast, Angela, if there's any students that didn't want to stay for the rest of this, you're welcome to go. Those
Wanna
that
learn about
presented earlier, I know that there's basketball games and things, so. But if not, okay. Very good.
So if Erica and Nick want to come up, I just wanted to point out that the ballot that you have is for the supplemental levy we currently have, renewing it because we renew it every 2 years and we renewed it in 2022. But they're going to discuss options moving forward with the bond and facilities.
Okay. Thank you, Angela, for the introduction.
Sorry, can I start with the question? Which one's Eric?
I'm Eric.
You're Eric?
Yeah.
So, so you're very good friends with Brian Stutzman?
That is incorrect statement.
Is it? Because on October 12th, October 12th, at a meeting, Stand Up for Idaho, he claims that he's consulted with you and you've shared information and he referred to you as a friend. But you don't know who he is?
I know who Mr. Stutzman is, but I'm not claiming him as a friend to the work.
Well, do you engage with him? The reason I ask, I mean, you can be friends with whoever you want. He went on to say, if my understanding is correct, that you coerce boards, or I think the word he used was coach boards to try and get the highest rates and so forth. And I'm wanting to know why you would share that with him or why you would tell him that. And more importantly, I guess I want to know why you would coerce
Well,
boards.
these are invited guests to
I know,
speak.
but they're supposed to speak with us. They're our client. And if he's telling people that he's,
Let's let them make the presentation and we'll.
I can categorically say that I have, in the last year, communicated with Mr. Stutzman one time. And that was through email with Angela responding to a specific question about when the ballot, which if you're ready for him to review.
okay, so he mischaracterized his relationship with you then.
According to what you said, absolutely.
Okay.
I have communicated with him in 2021 when he was working with the School Boards Association to try to negotiate language on some legislation he was working on. This was a year and a half ago. And we were not on the same page with what we were looking at in terms of. So I don't want to disparage Mr. Stutzman, but I have to tell you that
That's all I needed to know, and I think it is relevant, because from what Mr. Stutzman said, that Mr. Sorry, what's her name? Herringer stated was we should be careful of the advice they give us. So,
And he's asked an.
yeah, but he's clarified, so I'm happy with that
I would be happy to
clarification.
have a meeting with you and him to, confront him, because I think that's an absolute lie.
Okay. Good enough. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The financial advisor has a fiduciary duty to the district. And that, that's the role that you've asked her to serve. It's different than an underwriter, which Eric acts as an underwriter for some other school districts, but not District 91. The underwriter has dual duties to the bondholders and the district. The SEC promulgated rules 10 years ago.
Separate.
Saying
Yeah.
if you're a financial advisor, you have a fiduciary duty. So Eric Apple has to act in the best interest of the district.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So I have a presentation to kind of go through, unfortunately, I would like to be here talking about getting ready to sell some bonds, because he would have passed an election, and that would be why I was here. But as you know, bond election did not pass. So just kind of review, 250 million major project with the 2 elementary schools, replace Idaho Falls High School and remodel Skyline High School. Election results, 58%, just shy of that. That's pretty consistent with the results you got in 2017 and 2018. Almost your election results then were 57, 58%. So it's a lot more voters, I think a lot more votes this time. What's frustrating is that we're in Idaho, and even though there's a clear majority of your voters that wanted to approve the project and the bond, Idaho requires 2/3. That's something that's been true in my 20-year career in Idaho, and we always talk about, boy, it would be great to change that, but that's a constitutional amendment, and that's beyond my pay grade to figure out how to make happen with our legislature. I'd love to see it happen. So what's next? So I started out with do nothing. And I think I learned that when I was on a Zoom call with this district, when we were talking about some different options on what to do with your bonds. And I think one of the comments was, well, there is the option of do nothing. Right? Just bury it and move on. So I list that first. I don't know if that's necessarily realistic. The next option that is pretty clear is to rerun the bond for the same projects with a single, with just like you did, just rerun what you did, try again. You could also, third bullet, rerun the bond for the same projects, but split it into multiple questions where you could authorize elementary schools, yes, no, and then another question, authorize the high school projects, whether it's split out or together. You have plenty of options to think about how you might split up and vote on each single question up or down. I'm not advising necessarily that you do that. I'm just telling you that that's an option. We've seen it done before in Caldwell School District, going back 20 years. They did this, and they ran an elementary school project, middle school project, and high school project, all on the same ballot in 3 different questions, and all 3 ended up getting authorized. The elementary school got the most support, followed by middle school, followed by high school, which is somewhat of what we expected, just given the level of engagement that is typical at those grade levels. So that's an option. You could also run a smaller bond for a limited number of projects. You could peel out and say, these are the projects we need most, they're most urgent, and run those. And then the fifth, which we haven't really talked about before, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time explaining how it works, is to run a plant levy, because you have a plant facility levy, and that's a annual money that comes in from property taxes that can be used for school major maintenance and upgrades to your school facilities, but it can also be used to build new schools. You can use it for new school construction. You can use it to lease purchase facilities under the code. And so I wanted to explore what a plant levy might look like for a limited number of the projects. I don't think a plant levy is going to be, well, I know a plant levy is not going to be able to solve all the projects that you had proposed with the bond, but it could be used perhaps for like the elementary projects. So, again, this is just informational. So I wanted to kind of explore that last piece and what would a plant levy look like? And the benefit, really, the benefit of a plant levy in this concept is it could be done with a 55% approval rate as opposed to a 2/3. So I'm going to cover these plant levy basics, and that is the approval requirement can be as low as 55%. It could be 60%, or it could be 2/3. And how do we know which it's going to be depends on what the resulting tax per thousand will be if the plant passes for both your combined plant and bond. So you got to look at your bond and plant together. Can they be at $2 per thousand or less? You'd be at 55%. And if it's at $3 per thousand or lower, it's between $2 and $3 per thousand, it's a 60%. And then if it's above 3, it would be 2/3. The maximum term is 10 years. You have a plant levy right now. It's possible that you could vote to increase that or replace it with a higher amount and fall within that 55%. The concept being that then you would have revenue coming in to do projects, and you could actually enter into a lease purchase financing for a new school project that was effectively new construction. So you can still upfront the project, but they use the plant levy to make the lease purchase payments. Go to the next slide.
Sorry, how often, or when does it have to be renewed or how often? If there is a yes vote, how is that 5 years?
10.
So it's every year.
No,
The plan,
10 years.
the plan levy is
10 years.
authorized for up to 10 years.
Okay.
But you're a couple, 3 years into.
2, we're
2 years.
we're on our second year of our current one.
Existing. So this is probably pretty hard to read, and hopefully you can see it on your screens. Or maybe it's not on your screens. What I've gone through is the calculations for the voter approval threshold. And so that first column of numbers says 55%. We take your taxable market value, which is 7 billion, multiply that by that 0.002, which is the maximum levy rate that we can hit at 55%. And that equals $14 million. You don't have a bond levy next year, right? Because this is the last year of your existing bond levy. So that entire $14 million is the most you could have if the plant levy authorized at 55%. You currently have about 2.4 million authorized. And assuming that you need to continue to have that money for your existing ongoing projects, which has probably been committed through the remaining life of the plant levy in terms of projects you've identified to use on a pay-go basis. I subtract that 2.4 million from the 14, that leaves about 11.5 million per year for up to 10 years. So that's over $100 million to be generated over a 10-year period. The plant levy at 55%. Now the tax rate has to go up to $2 per thousand, or $200 per 100,000. So, it's not, it would require an increase, but if you remember the bond proposal in isolation, the cost of that new bond without the offset of the expiring bond was 233. So it's actually a little bit lower tax impact and a lower voter threshold. It would not get you as much money. So to dive a little bit deeper into so that's the plant levy. That's sort of one. That's the legal authorization to be able to collect the tax. It's a finite dollar amount, specific. So the tax liability is a fixed quantity. But the next piece of this is then how do you get the money up front? And that's through this lease purchase mechanism, which I'm going to talk about here. So really, it's a constitutional issue. Under the Idaho Constitution, no public entity can incur debt without a 2/3 supermajority. And that's not just school districts; it's cities, counties, you name it. It requires a 2/3 vote, unless the project is for an ordinary necessary expense, which has been litigated, and it's pretty hard to meet that test. The other is if it's an obligation for less than 1 year. So if you borrow money and pay it back within a year, if you don't extend your commitment beyond 1 year, it's not considered debt under the Constitution. It doesn't require 2/3. Kind of go into the legal stuff, but just to keep things rolling. So the idea here is that you enter into an annually renewable lease. So each year, the district sets the budget, appropriates money to make a lease payment on a facility that you built, and then the year goes by, you make that lease payment, and then the next year you renew the lease. You can also choose to not renew the lease. And because you have the ability to not renew the lease without legal recourse, the investors who invest in these financings aren't going to come to you because you didn't renew the lease. No, legally you have the ability not to. So from a constitutional standpoint, it's not long-term debt. Now, if you don't renew the lease for the facility that you're lease purchasing, you're going to get evicted from that facility. You won't have access to it. You won't have use of it. And so there is consequence to not renew the lease. So this is something you could do right now. Right? You could enter under the law a lease purchase agreement and build a new elementary school, but you wouldn't have any new source of funds to pay that lease payment. You'd have to come up out of the general fund. That's why we talk about a lease purchase financing paired with a plant levy, because the plant levy gives you the revenue to make the lease payments. This is something that Nick and I both worked on. Nick a lot more than I did because it was a Supreme Court case that clarified that these lease purchase financings that are annually renewable are allowed under the Constitution. So we've done these types of financing pre-2015, pre the Supreme Court decision. But each time we did, we had to go to a district court, get a judge to approve the financing is not violating the Constitution. This is exactly how Blaine County School District financed Wood River High School in 2002. So if you've ever been to Wood River High School, that's how they did. They did a plant levy, did a lease purchase. But in that case, they had to go to front of a judge, and the judge could have said no. Now that with the Supreme Court ruling, it's, as Nick would say, the law of the land, so we can go ahead and we don't have to go in front of a judge each time.
Can I just ask a clarification question, just so I make sure I have the right idea here? So let's say we were able to pass the plant facility levy for the 14 million. So we'd have 11 million a year in funding. So if we built a grade school at 25 million, it would have like a 3-year lease. So every year we'd pay that payment, and at the end of the 3 years, we would own the building.
On the building.
And we could then either enter into another one to build another grade school or expansions or whatever we needed there.
Yeah, but you could start out and say you could do 2 projects and then commit the plant levy for 10 years.
Yeah.
But it is a lease purchase where you end up buying it for like $10, just a nominal sum.
Sure.
It's not a fair value.
Balloon payment at the end.
Yeah, you can practically amortize it. You got to basically amortize it.
Can you do longer than a 3-year lease?
Pardon?
Can you do longer than a 3-year lease?
Oh, yeah.
You can finance it over up to the 10 years.
Up to the 10 years.
But the lease itself, again, renews every year.
You're right. So we could have 2 grade schools or 6 grade schools,
We could pay something off shorter if we wanted to.
As long as it fit within the 14 mil. in addition to
Join
the
the payment,
levy.
yes.
I mean, we could do a 20-year lease purchase, but but the problem is
Might run out of money.
Yeah, so it's risky.
So what are you gonna do if that funding's not renewed?
Yeah.
And that would be probably, from a credit standpoint, much more difficult. So we typically would pair this with the term of the lease purchase would correspond to the term of the plan. On this slide, let's see, we talked about it's an annual appropriation. It can be, you can choose not to appropriate. If you don't appropriate, you lose access to the facility, but you wouldn't lose access to the dirt. You guys would own the land and then lease the land to a trustee. The trustee would lease it back to you with the project, and you pay the trustee over 10 years to lease purchase it. But the land's always going to be reverting back to the district. Let's go to the next slide. So pros and cons. So clearly, one of the major benefits of this is that you can finance a project with a 55% effect, which is you get the plant levy authorized at 55%, do the lease purchase, and you can get you can leverage those future plant levy monies to get the project today. The other thing from a political standpoint is, the plant levy statute actually says that it's a perfectly fine use of those plant levy monies. It says that it can be used to lease purchase, for lease purchase agreements. So the code already contemplates that districts can do this with the plant levy. And the cons or the drawbacks are that, the first one is that there's more risk to these types of finances. So the bond rating is going to be lower. You don't have access to the state programs like the school bond guarantee, so we can't, get credit enhancement, which means that the interest rates are going to be higher than a corresponding bond, because the bond has the pledge of property tax, unlimited as to rate of amount, and you also have access to that state program, the state guarantee, with the better rating. So your interest rates would be slightly higher. And the other is that you lose not only the benefit of the school bond guarantee, but also the levy equalization. That's the subsidy that the state provides to school districts to offset what you have to levy to repay bonds. For some districts, like West Ada over in the Treasure Valley, they don't qualify for very much on levy equalization, only 10% of the interest cost. So it's not like they're leaving a bunch of money on the table if they choose to do this. In your case, you qualify for something more like 8% levy equalization, 8% of principal and interest, not 8% of interest. And that's a bigger number. So that's money that you wouldn't have access to from the state to help with the project. So it's kind of a balancing act. If I can't get the project, this is a way to do it. It might be more expensive because you don't have that support from the state.
Yeah.
Next slide, so this is not.
Eric, is it safe to say with that, that you don't get the extra money from the state if you can't pass a 2/3 rate anyway, right?
Correct.
Yes, in fact.
I mean, I get the con, but it's like, well, how do you get the money if you can't pass a 2/3?
If you don't have bond debt, you don't get it.
Perfectly true. So this is, just to kind of demonstrate, this is not some, wild, crazy idea. There are plenty of municipalities that have been using this type of financing recently. I mentioned Blaine County School District, they've done these lease purchases with a plant levy twice, starting in 2002, and then they did it again in 2011-12 timeframe. Kimberly School District did a lease purchase for a land acquisition. We just closed 3 weeks ago, College of Western Idaho. They're building a new health sciences building on their Nampa campus. Nez Perce County, City of Idaho Falls actually did it recently for a police station. City of Twin Falls is using this mechanism for a fire station. So it's not an unusual or strange or crazy way to go about financing a project in Idaho.
Yeah, until the Supreme Court decision in 2015, Idaho was one of the few states that didn't have a Supreme Court opinion. This nationwide, this technique was used extensively, including in Utah, and even for schools. So we came a little late to having this tool, but now we do.
Yep. So just to give you some kind of numbers, this slide looks at what could different plant levy amounts finance on this lease purchase. And so these are just some general numbers. I assumed a 3.5% interest rate on a 10-year financing, which is about where we'd expect it to come in. And if you look at, for every $1 million of plant levy, you could finance about 8.3 million. So think about that. That's $1 million per year for 10 years. That's $10 million. So why can't you afford 10 million? Because you do have to pay interest on. There is an interest component to these lease purchase financings, and that's going to be about 1.7 million. Probably. So that's just a nice way to say for every $1 million plant, you could get 8.3. So you could do the math if you want. So let's look at 10 million plant levy, which you could get at 55%, which afford 83 million. And you could finance $83 million. If you pass that plant levy, you could finance about an $83 million project. I looked at the max, so the 14 million on that last column, and that's the max amount you could do at 55%. And after subtracting the 2.4 million that you need, or well, I think you need for your existing, because you already have it authorized.
That's what we use for roofing and repairs and all of our original.
Yeah. But if you took all the balance, which would be the 14 million minus the 2.4, that could finance about 96 projects. So this concept only works with districts that have a pretty sizable tax base, where that $2 per thousand can generate a significant amount of dollars.
And no debt.
So Eric, on a bond, I know like the legislature will pay for some of the interest on that. Is that true for levies also?
Yeah, that's the bond levy utilization method I talked about.
So we're up for 100% of the interest.
Yeah, you're going to be
versus
paying 100%.
They never paid 100% of our interest. They
No,
but
no,
yes, we wouldn't get any match from the
Right, but you hear that with bonds.
Yes.
School districts promote that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. If we don't have a pass, we don't get any, but the bond levy equalization is the 7% he was talking about that we get. So I think last year, what did we get? Probably $500,000 from the state.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of, I've got some history on the levy
So
utilization.
we get a pretty good sizable chunk of money towards our bonds that we would be walking away from with a lease purchase. But if you can't pass a bond,
right?
And if you look at Eric's chart, it does save some because it's a shorter term. You do end up with some interest savings because it's like paying your,
Well, yeah, that's the slide after the next is so the next slide, just to help with those dollar amounts that are on the last slide. This is the breakout of the projects that are on the last bond. 2 elementary schools at 27 million each, so 54 million. That you could do the elementary schools. Well, I haven't mentioned this yet, but this, from a legal standpoint, there are some restrictions on how, what kind of projects you can do. It becomes really hard to use this lease purchase for a major remodel. So for the, the Skyline project, which is all remodel, refurbished, that's gonna be tough to fit in to the legal, that is allowed under the Supreme Court. It works for new construction or additions, so you can do an addition to an existing building, add a wing, but standalone new construction is kind of the more straightforward way.
And that goes back to the renewing it every year. You gotta be able to walk away from it. And if you are just doing construction on a building you own, obviously the lien holders can't come in and rip out all the plumbing. Does that make sense?
You said every year, but they're saying it's a 10-year levy though, right?
Yes, but the reason why it fits under levy is because we have the ability to renew or not renew every year when we pass the budget.
The lease.
Yeah, the lease portion.
And that's why they that's why they say you can't renovate, because we wouldn't want the entire high school to revert to the lien holders because we borrowed some to fix it up when we have ownership of the
Right,
entire.
but what is major renovation defined as? Because a lot of what was being done, there was some renovation was at Skyline, but there was a lot of additions also as part of that
Yeah, we can
renovation.
separate out the additions. I mean, as Eric said, anything that's standalone, I think, just as Angela said, from our standpoint, it'd be difficult for us to give up everything, but the bondholder, the lien holder, the lender, is gonna say, well, if you're non-renewing, you're not gonna renew the lease, you're gonna take back what I financed. But it's pretty hard to take back pipes and,
But as the fact that we don't own the Civic, it would be, if you added on to Skyline, we would obviously have the ability to say, well, we don't want to own that piece of Skyline.
Yeah,
Also-
go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, but also in theory, like if you wouldn't have to do the lease buyback for the whole portion. You could do it for 54 million. You could still raise your plant levy rate up and you'd have excess every year of, let's say, 4 million. I don't know what the number is, that then we could use towards renovations and things like that.
And you'd have a guaranteed inflow, so you might have to take several years to get the project done, but you could piece it out. And that's just like the plant money now. We use it in the year and, when we roof, we own the roofs. You just wouldn't be able to pre-finance any kind of renovation.
Well, I was just gonna say the very same thing. It becomes a phased project. You collect the levy amount, you do that, the following year you do the next, that sort of thing. That's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, and I think you're on the right track. I mean, again, just to clarify, the plant levy is authorized for 10 years. That's not, annually renewable. Like,
Right.
the annual renewable piece is with the lease, yeah. And when Blaine County, when they were doing their projects in 2011, 12, they had, the spreadsheet, like we're bringing in $5 million of plant money, but, we're using about 1 or 2 million a year for pay-as-you-go projects. And then the balance was being used to lease purchase. So they were front-ending a bunch of projects and then having money to do pay-as-you-go.
And they built a new school.
In 2002, they did. The second time around, they built some
They
new.
phased it out.
they
How
built some
long
new
did the
facilities.
projects take?
Bus part, yeah.
Maintenance facility, standalone.
So this is, Angela was referring to this, and I apologize that the numbers are really small, but what I wanted to demonstrate with this is that on the left-hand side, we've got what the annual lease payments would be with a COP, a certificate of participation. That's what we call the financings that go with these lease purchase projects. So it's a 10-year payback period for an $80 million project. $80 million financing. How much does it take to pay it back? About $9.6 million per year for 10 years. So that's $96 million paid out over 10 years to get a $80 million project. So the effective interest is $16.2 million. But that's a 55%, approval to get that. And then you compare it to the bond, which is the next side of it. And again, I imagine the numbers are hard to read, but we do the same 80 million on a traditional bond where it's paid back over 20 years. Because it's a 20-year payback, the interest rate, and I said that the interest rate on a bond is going to be lower than on a plant, COP, if it's the same repayment term. So if I do a 10-year repayment term on a bond, the interest rate's gonna be lower, but we typically do a bond on 20 years, so. When you look at the bond payments for a 20-year bond, they're lower, roughly 5.9 million, but over 20 years, they add up to 117.7 million. So overall, there's more interest because it's a longer payback. And then you have your offset of your 8.9%, or I'm sorry, 8.2% of the principal and interest, which is the levy subsidy. Your net payments are 5.4 million. So net, which I think is the number that matters, how much you need to collect over 20 years to pay back the bond, 108 million versus collecting 96 million on a plant to get the same $80 million.
The $12 million savings.
Right.
So even though you're walking away from the equalization, which you factored in, you still actually are levying less from the public.
If I did this comparison and said, okay, well then what does a 10-year bond look like? Well, the 10-year bond will be more attractive now, right? But it's, that's the trend. The lower.
Is a levy purchased at a bond rate?
No, they're sold different.
There's specific levy rates.
He means the cost of the debt.
Yeah.
Oh, the interest rate?
Mhm.
So the interest rate, so, we're typically gonna see, and again, it goes with the bond rating, it's gonna be lower. And because of the additional risk that investors know you have the ability to not appropriate, the interest rate's gonna be higher. And that difference is gonna be 1/4 to 0.5%.
Okay.
If you compare it to, apples to apples on a 10-year finance versus a 10-year bond.
Are we going to get these numbers like printed out?
Yes, I'm sorry. I gave them to Jess just right before the meeting, so she attached them all, but you won't be able to see until after.
Okay.
Yeah.
But his whole presentation is attached.
So that's generally what we wanted to, give you an option to think about as you think about the next steps and whether it's to try to run a bond again and think about a different way to approach it. Like I said at the beginning, you have some options. Rerun what you did, break it into different pieces, do something smaller on a bond or do something smaller on a plan. So there's some options to kind of chew over. The last couple of slides are just on interest rates. I mean, there has been a lot of talk about interest rates, interest cost, interest rates have gone up. But actually, we've seen a little bit of a drop in rates over the last month. Even today, the Fed raised rates 0.5%. Yes, the Fed raised rates. So did rates go up today? Yes. Did municipal bond rates that are paid back over 10 to 20 years go up today? No. Because the rates that we have in our market for bonds, for any kind of long-term financing, are anticipating what the Fed is doing. And so we're actually seeing rates that are a little bit lower now than they were a couple of months ago, which is helpful to see. So it's not the end of the world when it comes to interest rates, just because the Fed raised rates yesterday. They might be putting us into a recession, but that's remains to be seen. So I didn't come here to talk economic policy. I came to talk about your options.
I've been asked to be an economist several times.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be pretty close, as you can see, it kind of spiked up and then back down. So, we're probably a little lower now than we were when we put the election forward.
So I just want to clarify, so in March, we have our supplemental levy, it's a 2-year levy coming up, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be something to look at possibly after that.
Possibly after, yes.
And this is not the same as the supplemental levy, just to be totally clear.
This is plant facility.
Plant facility.
Supplement.
It's similar to our SPFM. It's a plant facility.
Right, okay.
Those could switch too. I'm not saying we do, I'm just saying, if you wanted to do plant in March and supplemental in May, the board can reverse them. I think Dr. Shank's recommendation is to keep supplemental where it is and
make sure we
do this.
can operate next year.
Have that for so long, it's something that comes up, but from a budget perspective, it's a permanent part of our budget because it's been there for decades, multiple decades.
Yes.
So it would be hard, but it's something to be discussed. I mean, to be honest with you, I giggle a little bit. I wasn't, in fact, when the bond had failed, I had no desire personally to run the bond again in March. And then of the emails that we've received that has made sure that we don't run the bond in March, made me wonder why they're so interested that we not run the bond in March. To that, should we look at running the bond in March? Because why are they so interested that we shouldn't run the bond in March?
It's clickbait.
So I'm like starting to question if we should run the bond in March.
Another email is telling us to run the bond in March.
I guess one. All I got was one on that, but one or two, but. And there's something to be said about that if you do some research, which I can share. But there's reason for that. So I don't know. I just find it comical that it's the emails that we all received that made me start wondering.
I
Why
know
not
in one
March?
of your presentations, you guys have published before which month passed.
Yeah. They present.
March.
March has the highest passes rates.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they're so concerned that we
Statistically,
shouldn't
there are
run a
months
bond in
that are
March.
better.
Right, followed by May. But yeah, you also, this year, and we were talking about this earlier, the May is not a, there's not a stabilized.
No primary.
There's no primary.
This would be it.
And but Nick's prepared a ballot, correct?
Yes, so
Yeah.
the ballot we've included is for the supplemental.
Yeah, I just looked. I don't think I got that. We didn't get it. I just looked at my email.
I think it'll be in the packet, like.
Okay.
And that's
just
the
looked at
one,
the
we
Friday
have to
email and it
submit to the
wasn't there.
county by the 23rd of January. So we will have that on the agenda for approval in the next meeting, the first meeting. Are we only having one in January?
No, we have two.
Two. At the first meeting in January, because we do have to have it to the county prior to the 23rd in order to be on the ballot in March. But that one, I didn't want to confuse their presentation with an existing supplemental levy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Nick, is the ballot any different than the one 2 years ago?
Yes, the legislature, 2022 legislature adopted a requirement to itemize the purposes the district is going to use the supplemental for. And we've been working with districts across the state. Some have gone pretty detailed, some have been pretty, conclusory. There's no guidance really about how detailed you have to be. Our, recommendation is that almost less is better in the sense that you have to say the approximate amount. Doesn't that be, you could be wrong on the amount you're going to spend. But if you identify a purpose, that's it. You have to spend it on that purpose. So you either, we have one district that was going to, let's buy a school bus. Excuse me. What's it like, if you don't buy a school bus in both years, that's $125,000 that you won't get to spend. So, there's a little bit of maneuvering, but Angela's come up with you'll see it in the form
ballot.
when it comes out to you, of essentially doing what you do now. Salary payments for teachers and staff. Safety and security, and I think there's a little bit of extracurricular.
Yeah, athletics and extracurricular activities.
And that's good. And then, again, burdensome, but the district has to publish next year in the budget cycle what it actually spent it on. It's not illegal, or you don't sacrifice it other than, like say, a purpose you didn't spend on. It doesn't invalidate the levy. It's just accountability. So you could, if you were way off for some reason, somebody could look at the newspaper and say, gee, I didn't like the fact that you were way off. So you have some accountability, but there again, by picking broad categories, you're probably going to be pretty on target. It won't be that burdensome for the finance office to track what we actually spent the money. So it is new, but it's still a 50% vote, still a 2-year max, or 2-year maximum term. There's no limit on the amount. Most districts are doing what you're doing, which is renew for the same amount. To add more, but pretty safe to go with the same. So it's drafted, but, you know, I'd say consult with the staff and Angela if you're concerned about the itemization, but we talked about it, but let's just incorporate what we currently do.
And those are the categories we've traditionally spent on. And obviously, you can see by the budget that we spent a lot more than what we're asking. That's why they call it supplemental, and it's just supposed to be a piece of that expense, not the entire expense.
District 93 passed out in November, and it's a little more itemized. They said, well, this is accountability is the concept, but it's transparency too. And so I think that's in the PowerPoint or something that I'm not sure that went around here, but the Twin Falls District is doing about what Angela suggested for us to do. So I wouldn't use the District 93 necessarily as an example. I think they only got 58%, or they got higher. Debatable whether is that because they itemized it or is that because they ran it in November. Anybody's guess there. That is a new requirement. It's, we think, kind of unfortunate because it's creating a lot of work for people that's not having, to me, much impact. It's not going to, most districts are going to renew the supplementals the same amount, just creating a lot more.
And another publication.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Eric or Nick? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. As Paul was saying, we have received a lot of patron input in the survey that was sent out, emails. We appreciate everybody's concerns, their thoughts, their ideas. We do have one in-person patron that would like to speak. Paula, if you would like to come up and introduce yourself, please. And Jess does typically time you. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
My name is Paula Trudell. I'm a teacher at IF. I also have 2 kids in the district. My son goes to IF and my daughter goes to Sunnyside. So as a teacher, I have some serious concerns about the changes to the academic schedule that you guys proposed at IF. I feel your frustration with the bond not passing because I am there too, but the best thing about it is its academic excellence. We have a dream team of educators at this school, and I've worked at 5 different schools, so I mean that in all sincerity. We may not have practice fields or updated lab equipments, and I may not get to go to the bathroom during passing periods, but what I do know is that everybody is making the best decision for kids at the school, and it's truly a remarkable place to work for. There's 2 schedules that are coming up, the split session and the trimester schedule, and because I'm short on time, I'm just going to say that efficacy of both of these is not good for student learning. Number one, as a coach, my ability to work with kids is going to drastically go down. As a golf coach, I don't get to turn on lights or anything like that, so time-wise it's a problem. As a teacher, I know that the 70-minute schedule is not effective for kids, but mostly for a mom, this schedule makes it impossible for me to work here, and that's the part that upsets me the most. Because I love this job and it breaks my heart to think about having to look at other opportunities for employment, maybe like working online for IDLA or different things. So I'm hoping that you guys will take the consideration in tonight of teachers as well. And I know we have an overcrowding problem, but a couple of things I'd like you to think about. If you are going to make a change to the schedule, I ask you do it immediately because transfers come up in January and new hiring does too. So I think in all fairness, you owe it to teachers to be making the best decision for their families. I also ask that you consider some other options that we might have to address the overcrowding in the hall, besides making a drastic change to the academic calendar. And last, as an educator, every decision I make, I put through the filter of, is this best for my students? Is this the best learning opportunity for them? And so I ask that you guys will do the same thing tonight when you discuss that academic schedules that you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the IFEA report. Julie's not here. Is Stephanie? Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for your time tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jess Donnelly. I'm the president-elect of IFBA, and I'm filling in for Julie tonight because she's out. I just wanted to kind of tell you what we've been up to. It's a busy season for everybody, including us. We've done some really amazing events that I'd like to share. In late November, we held a Pie in Politics event with some of our educators and local legislators. Representative Furness, Representative Ehart, Senator Cook, and Representative Erickson, Representative Erickson were all able to attend. We're really thankful that they took the time to do this because some of them drove back to Boise that night after the event, and it was real snowy, and so we just really thank them for their time. We set up the event with plenty of pie to eat and had rotating table sessions, so all the teachers and legislators got to speak to one another. There were some really good conversations. We think it was a really positive experience. We're looking forward to continuing those discussions with them when we go to visit the Capitol in February. Then this month, we had our annual holiday party with our members and some very special guests. Tito and a few of the IT crew came and hung out with us and played some games. We always raise money for the Children's Fund at these events, and we were so happy to raise over $1,000 at this one single event. And that money, as you know, goes directly to those students who need it. We're not just partying and eating pie right now. We've also been doing some fantastic work in the district with our committees. We've had some great monthly meetings with Andrea, and we're preparing for interest-based bargaining training for negotiations when we come back in January. Our negotiations team's really excited about that and looking forward to it. So that's all I have tonight. And have a good holiday season and good stuff for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too. Before we go on to the next agenda item, the board has been in meeting for 2 hours. I think we'll take just a quick 5-minute break. Larry, do you need to stretch your legs at all or anything? Everybody doing okay? Do you need a break?
Does anyone need a break?
Okay, if everybody's good, then I guess we will just move on.
Does anybody mind if I just stand up?
No,
I'm good to stay. I just
Okay.
like to just stand up.
Yep. Okay, so then high school master schedule.
Good. In your packets, there are 3 proposals with respect to the master schedule. I'll just begin with the third, and I think the one that's of most interest to everyone, and that's the split sessions. And you'll see what was asked for at the last board meeting, which was to report out what that might look like. So if you'll pull those up, you can see. And then I've also asked Dr. Powell to be with us in case we have any questions or comments that we'd like him to look at. So in reference to this one, the year-long split session, you can see there's an A, B, and an A schedule and a B schedule. The A schedule starts at 7 o'clock and goes till 1:25, and the B schedule would begin at 1:30, ending at 7:55 in the evening. And of course, there are concerns with that particular schedule, not only for students, which we think it impacts significantly, but also staffing, teachers, and some various needs. Dr. Powell has also presented, and I think that's on a different page. We probably have to go look at that. Oh, there's a printout. Yeah, right here. Some of the staffing needs that he states that he would need. So you can take a look at those. I don't know what happens there. Anyway, it's projected some additional teachers.
Sorry, which
some
printout are we looking
administration.
at? No, the one that you're referring to with staffing and stuff.
I got.
I didn't see that anywhere.
Well, it's not on this page, but I'll tell you what was on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, about 20 new teachers would need to be hired, an additional administrator, support staff to go along with. There we go. We could pass that through. I'll just read it. An SRO, counselors, attendance clerk, secretary, a grad advocate, counseling secretary, and then additional parapros. It looks like we need to add about 20 courses that are predominantly 11, 12, 12 courses that are predominantly 9, 10, and then 42 courses that have students from all grades, 3 grades on a 10, 11. We probably need to be able to schedule so that some of the elective teachers work across the split sessions. Most fiscally conservative estimate is we'd be able to save about half of the 42 teachers through the master scheduling process. That would mean we'd need to add 21 more teachers. So that's their best estimate at how this looks. So I'll just pass that through.
And just to clarify, when this is called year-long split session, we
Yeah.
talked about year-round school, but this isn't year-round.
This
This is
isn't
just
year-round
this school year, right?
Yeah, this is
So it's
just a
just regular school split session.
split out, going longer, starting earlier and going significantly longer during the day with different groups coming and starting, ending at different times. A couple of comments with this. Trustees, this is not my recommendation or the recommendation of the staff that we split these sessions for specific reasons. One, the cost to do this is a lot of money. We have to add new teachers. We have to add new staff. There's going to be a huge investment in order for this to occur. That's one, but it's not the most important. The second most important is how it'll affect kids. It's everybody that you talk to that's actually gone through split sessions themselves personally has come out with a very negative experience. The third is most of the time when you go to split sessions, it's about some sort of emergency. The school burns down or some sort of catastrophic event. And there's an end to it. You buckle down, you apply to the state for waivers, you work through the day in a way that's more efficient. But it looks like there's something that's going to come to the end. It isn't something that's going to go on. And I don't know that there's an end to this. I'm not saying there wouldn't be. We would hope to be able to pass a bond or do some other type of financial position that will allow us to make some changes. But I don't have any sense of a time frame on that. I would suggest and I guess clearly state that this is not a good idea, and would ask that we pivot away from this evening as a legitimate option, that it's something that we would do, and ask that we focus on the 2 other proposals that are inside the packet. You'll see one that speaks to a trimester system that's a bit of a change, and then another that's just adding a 0 hour. And I'd like to invite Dr. Powell to become a part of this discussion and ask him, Dr. Powell, how is it that we could be more safe at Idaho Falls High School? How is it we could, how is it that we could make the halls more safer? Could it be that we have 100 kids taught somewhere at a different time in a different location? So that's some of the interest I have. The trimester schedule, the number 2, I think that's on there that you click on, has some other implications, which is graduation requirements. So we'd have to go through quite a bit of changing for that as well. So anyway, I think we need to kind of have a good discussion with the principal that we asked to run this school.
Yeah, before he comments, I just like to clarify one thing. I agree with what you're saying, but I also want to say this is a Band-Aid for this coming school year. And we may find a different solution for the following school year. But I felt like you said we're never going to ever look at split sessions. And I guess my comment is maybe not for the coming school year, maybe not for the school year after that. But if something doesn't happen with the growth in this community, split sessions may be the solution at some point, is my opinion. I mean, I'm just saying it sounded like you put the lid pretty hard down on you would never ever support split sessions. I'm saying I know they're not optimal, but if this is all the facilities we're ever going to get, and if this community grows like we said it's going to grow and that we see that it's growing, I just think it's tough to say we're never ever going to consider split sessions. I think it could be a good recommendation for this coming school year and possibly the one after that. But if something doesn't change, split sessions may be part. It's been part of our district before when we had incredible growth. It was not the first time. split sessions has hit this district and it may happen again.
Fair point. Never say never type of thing. You never know what's gonna happen in the future. You know, well taken.
So I wanna be clear, so I don't get any more hate mail, that I'm not disagreeing with you for this coming school year. My point is exactly what you just said. Never say never. Because if we keep marching down the road that this district has marched for the last 10 years, 5, 6, 7 years or so, 15, whatever it is, at one point it may be a solution for this district. If we're never going to build another facility, another high school, split sessions will be part of this district.
And I think that comes into the bigger discussion is we've got to make decisions for next year, which, you
Yeah,
know, these are
agreed.
alternatives, but the discussion can't stop there. It's, we've got to look at, you know, whether it's through the bonding or the levies or whatever it is, how we incorporate finding some sort of remedy, you know, I mean, whether that's a ninth grade center, whether that's increased CTE, whether that's, you know, some shifting, that, you know, we've got to be looking at that, but yeah, if we never get any funding, it's gonna get harder.
I agree.
And so I think that, you know, but I think we need to,
I've just learned
Short
people
term.
like to use our words out of context. And so I just wanted to clarify, so you're not quoted in 3 or 4 or 5 years from now
Okay.
as saying that this would never happen, when it's gonna be a potential option every single year until there's another school built.
And I concur with that. Thank you. Okay, so, okay, Dr. Powell, would you talk us through these proposals?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to echo what Paula said and what Dr. Shank said, that I don't think that what we propose is a good solution for kids, and it's not a good solution for teachers. And we got to remember that, as hard as it is. I don't like, you know, standing down the hall by the Civic when they're having an event and making sure adults aren't coming into the school. But that is a much less impactful nuisance than changing the environment and schedule for everybody else. I don't like that, you know, all of our administrators have to supervise the Tiger Tile. But the Tiger Tile is a pinch point, and there are some things that can be done there. You go down the band hall or down the English hall away from their cross upstairs, and it's not the same crowd that you see at the Tiger Tile. So I'm hopeful that there are some things we could do with, you know, creating some no standing zones in the Tiger Tile. Now, that takes away common space from kids, and kids need common space in high schools. They need a spot to socialize. Is there a way to open up, you know, some other room that becomes a common space where kids can socialize? Now, that would take away a classroom, and we're using all of our classrooms in this building, plus a couple out in the West Stadium and the South Hill. Can we renovate more in the West Stadium? Is it a nuisance to walk across the field? Yes. Is it a reason to go to split sessions? I don't think so. And, you know, ultimately, I know there's talk about we can't get more modular classrooms and things, but there's room on this campus to cut down the trees in the front and put modular classrooms out there. That is a better solution for kids and teachers than split sessions. And it takes a lot of supervision. Maybe some of the increasing safety in that crowded hall is adding a dean, adding some personnel that is less than 20 teachers. I don't know where I'd find 20 teachers if I had to, you know. And that's only the additional ones. That's not accounting for the ones who leave. And I think, like Dr. Shank said, I think we really need to move away from that, particularly, you know, if it's just a conversation of right now. But teachers deserve security. and they deserve to know what their conditions are gonna be like. And we have great teachers at IF, and they will be picked up in a heartbeat if they put their applications out there. And that's gonna destroy more than just IF. It'll have a negative impact on the district for a long time. So I think I would appreciate if, if we're taking split sessions off the table, that we clearly take them off the table, so everybody knows that we're not doing that next year, and they don't need to dust off their resumes, because that's a big concern of mine. And I've had more than just Paula, career IF teachers have come in and said, I never thought I would think this, but I'm looking at that January 15th date. And that's hard. And I just try to tell them, we're gonna get through this, trust it. But there's a reality to unknown that makes parents nervous, that makes the teachers nervous. And I think we need to address some of those things tonight. So I'm open for suggestions and questions. And
So am I hearing you correct, Dr. Powell? Are you saying none of these three options should be considered for next year? Is that what you're saying? And when you say split sessions, are you only talking split sessions?
I'm talking primarily the year-long split session. I also think the trimester schedule is probably not necessary next year. And, I have some written notes on that thing that talked about staffing. Our incoming eighth graders is about, the class is about 40 students bigger than the current senior class. So our incoming seventh graders is about 140 students bigger than our 11th graders. So I think, particularly next year, we can pretty much stay status quo. Maybe we add a 0 period to spread some kids out. Maybe we open another classroom in the West Stadium to take more kids out of the main building. Maybe we change the traffic flow patterns. Kids are here at board meeting because they're concerned and it's important to them. And I think, if we go to them and say, here's our concern and here's our solution, can you help us solve this issue? They're gonna do it, and the teachers are gonna do it. Part of the reason, I think we've had 2 fights in the halls this year. And part of the reason for that is because the teachers stand at their doors every period, up and down the halls. And that's a hard culture to establish, and it's an important one, and it should be recognized. And that makes IF safe, yes, it's crowded, but it's not a safety crisis where we have kids sitting on floors and fights every passing period, and we can't figure out where the kids are. We're not at that point that requires, in my opinion, a drastic, impact on kids' education. I think we've outgrown this building. I clearly think we've outgrown this facility and the plant. I don't think there's a lot we can do. Talking about putting modulars on the front in homes is not a good solution. But it's like we're at that point, and I would rather see us as a district go that route prior to trying to, change the whole schedule, change class lengths and all those kinds of things that are gonna, we don't know what the negative impacts of those are gonna be.
Yeah, just speaking for myself, I agree with you and Dr. Schenk on the on split sessions. It may be premature, and peak discussions I've had with parents and teachers and administrators, specifically Dr. Schenk, over the last several weeks. Status quo, I don't know if I'm ready to go 180 degrees over to status quo and just keep doing what we've always done. Do you have any idea, Laura, when we're gonna lose the band room and the art room?
The city threatens it often.
Every year.
And there will likely be impact this year for events that will need those rooms, and classes will not be in there. I mean, those are a reality every year, and especially as we move away from COVID and bigger touring acts are coming in. They need that space. And then you're also cutting the hallway in half because they're gonna have to pipe and drape because they're gonna be coming in and out. So that is going to be, you know, a large safety concern for the day, for the, you know, one school day, maybe twice this year or the next coming year. But yes, they want those. It's the capital campaign that has to raise the funds first before they can even get started on that back half. They're gonna do the front first. But they could send a letter to Dr. Shank tomorrow
Yeah.
and tell him to vacate.
So just status quo. Honestly, I don't know how you can say we can just do status quo, continued, and not address the issue.
I don't think we can just do nothing. We have some plans to, you know, particularly around the tiger tiles, you know, when we come back, we're putting some tape on the floor and things that says. this is
Can
no
it come
shopping
up?
area, you know.
Can we jackhammer it up and turn it into?
Well, I was gonna ask the same thing, so I'm glad an IF
Yes.
alumni asked the
I meant that
question,
maybe a
because I would
couple
get,
years ago.
can we take that and put it in a very nice frame and put it on the wall? I'm not an IF. I know it's really special to some people, so I admit that I don't understand the tradition of it. But could it come up? Because it's her idea. It's her idea. To everybody, her idea.
But if you walk down our halls, there are tiles that have been replaced. They clearly
Yeah.
have been
They-
replaced in the halls.
It can come up.
So.
Yeah.
I think the answer to that is yes.
What does
It
it-
can come
but-
up and.
And I'm not supposed to address the student
Right.
body, but I'm going to. Would you care if it came up? So that you had more room? But we won't get rid of it. Can it be moved?
It can't be, you don't want it to be.
Okay, so armed guard still needs to be in front.
We could get under it and bring it up. I checked into
Yeah.
that.
All right, sorry, guys.
So I think that's a solution. I think that's a part of the solution to create, you know, better flow right there. We're gonna go back to kind of really clearly saying, you know, up and down on the right side of the steps. We worked really hard on that during COVID and it seemed to flow a little better. We could at some point say, you know, this staircase is up only, this staircase is down only, and control traffic flow. I would probably want somebody to come in and help me with that because I'm not a civil engineer on moving people or cars or things like that. So there are some of those things that can be done. I think in my experience in education, nothing, no matter how crowded the school is, nothing trumps supervision. You know, and so can we add supervision? Can we add hall staff to help with that, to create safety and allow flow? And I think there's solutions to that are not status quo. It's not just what we've always done. Well, we didn't get the bond, so let's just wait another couple of years and run it again. Can we bus some of our kids to empty classrooms, you know, at other schools nearby? Can we put modulars at Skyline and change boundaries? There's a lot of things I think we can do that are definitely disruptive. None of them are without cost, but I think they're all better options that we need to explore over the next year
I have
to
a
really
question.
figure out kind of long.
How many wavering students do you get from Skyline boundaries?
So this year, except for the ones that were already in our system, already at IF that had already been approved, I kind of believe it's really hard for me to change kind of the continuity of education for a kid and pull a waiver their senior
But
year.
Don't
But-
take them at
But
freshman.
we denied all of them except I think three to five eighth graders who came in from Taylor.
For their family, did they have family would that be a reason why family siblings?
No, they were already wavered into Taylor View, and so we took them with their current class.
Okay.
And everything else we've denied, from Skyline's boundaries, from outside, and we just told them, we can't take more kids when we're asking the public for a bond and we're as grounded as we are, because we are that grounded.
How many classrooms or open spaces are available in that southeast portion of the stadium?
In the West Stadium, there's 2 plus the construction, the old construction tech lab that was CTE, that could be turned into a classroom as well. So we could currently fit 3. There's an upstairs area above the auto shop that we could probably use as a classroom. I think we'll have to have them really look at HVAC, because there's
I was
some
gonna say it would-
venting above the
it
auto
would
shop.
require major
Um,
construction.
So, and then much of the rest of the West Stadium is really old storage from maintenance when they were out there, and some of that probably could be moved out. I don't know how many square feet it is, but
It
I'd
could go
rather
with
see
storage
us
units
clean
then.
that stuff out, put storage in connexes or something, and turn that space into classrooms if we really have that need, so that we can take kids out of this building.
What is the feasibility of like busing? It's like they're there. I know there's been suggestions with the building by the aquatic center, some of the open space that CT vacated from Compass. I mean, what's the feasibility of busing some kids for some classes?
Well, we shuttle kids over to CTEC now. So, I mean, we'd have to look at the ability to find out where the locations would be that would be needed. So for instance, we already had a meeting a week or so ago that talked about perhaps if needed, we could still teach 100 kids more over at CTEC in one of the rooms that's not remodeled. So we would just have them moved throughout the day when it was needed. Ralph Frost is right here. Ralph, what's the feasibility, would you say, of moving kids to another locations? For instance, CTEC, we've even taken a look at possibility of needing a room over at Compass or something. Could we get more kids from here over there?
As long as it's close, as long as a lot of class time is farther away, then obviously you're losing class time.
So I would say we would find a way.
If Mrs. Trudell, is that right? Yeah, Paula, if she's here, I plan on contacting you later in the week if you're here. But I have a couple questions. Why is she so against the trimester schedule? Do you know? Or what's the downside? Okay. I know, but technically I can't talk to you.
I regret that rule. Sorry.
Well, I think an obvious impact of that.
Right now, I should say, but I will get a hold of you.
An obvious impact of that is if you go from teaching, so the trimester schedule means that the core classes, you'll finish your whole year's English class in 2 trimesters instead of 3. And right now they have 3 trimesters of 60-minute classes. In the trimester schedule, they'd have 2 trimesters of 70-minute classes. So some kids would be split. They would take English A in the fall, English B in the spring, have no English in the winter. That could be a challenge. Some kids will finish the whole year by the end of the 2nd trimester. And if that's a math class, and then they don't start their next year's math class until the 2nd trimester, they've gone almost a year with no math instruction. So those are some of the challenges, I think, that were part of the reason D91 went away from the trimester.
So this isn't a trimester, this is a semester
No,
schedule.
we used to have a trimester schedule, just like you talked about in the 90s when we first switched over. And so it is,
We
it's,
switched in 80.
so the classes are longer, so you don't take them all year. So it's 3 trimesters, but you only have to have 2 to have a whole year class.
So this is what you were
So-
talking about when you said true trimester is,
True trimester, yeah.
so we would have the 3 trimesters where they are right now in the length of the school year? Like,
No,
we
just
would-
Lakeland was-
like it is now.
Yeah, we'd have the same trimesters we have inside the school year but you wouldn't be taking 3 trimesters a year. You'd be taking
You'd
2.
still take 3, but you may not, well,
They may
I guess
not
you may
line-
not have to,
Yeah.
yeah.
You wouldn't take English all year.
Is what the core classes. Started in-
And I assume it didn't go
And that's
well.
because, that's because the minutes required to earn a credit. So when you go down to, 58 days or whatever you are in a trimester at 60-minute classes to earn a year's credit, and you kind of have to take them all 3. At 70 minutes, you can earn a year's credit in the state of Idaho. You've met enough minutes in 2 trimesters. So it creates some flexibility with interventions or things like that, but it will ultimately take away some teaching time from the year-long core classes.
Yeah, and I mean, one major concern I would have with it, maybe this is where Mr. Trudell is coming from, but when I look at the graduation requirements and see that we have 61 requirements today, or credits, I should say, and it drops to 47, that's a concern
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
me.
absolutely.
You would have to because the kids are taking 5 classes a day instead of 6.
And what's the state requirement? Just, I'm curious, I'm not
46, I think.
46,
47.
so.
So bare minimum.
Well, we're over it,
Not
so
what we
it's hard to. I said we're over it, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But still at bare minimum.
Yes.
and then Dr. Shank with the adding 0 hour. The only way that helps is if those who take 0 hour don't take 6th period, right?
Yeah,
Because if they end up not taking third period, they're gonna stay here because most of them gonna go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it also adds an opportunity there, more than we're doing now. But the
Is that how
notion
that
there
would
would be to move more students out of the building and relieve the pressure.
But is that how it would work though? Those who took 0 hour would not take a 6th period, or would it be scattered throughout the day?
In theory, yeah, we'd have to do a master schedule matrix to figure out how the kids would flow, but it's possible they could end their day at 2:35, right?
Right, and it would, I mean, even if the student started 0 hour and they had a requirement that they had to take 6th hour, so they had an off-campus period, 2nd period, or 3rd period, they still would be off campus and not in the hall. So if we had 100 or 200 students take a 0 hour somewhere in the rest of the day, it would alleviate some of that pressure. It wouldn't be a one-to-one issue. It would alleviate some of it.
Yeah. It's
And
not a perfect.
off-campus hours are typically for juniors, seniors, though. You're not, is that
Mostly, they have to be pretty well on their way to the graduation
just for?
requirements.
Can we circle back to the crowding in the halls and safety? I know we've had some concerns raised about evacuation in board meetings, and I continue to be aware of those concerns. Can you speak to how your ideas for reducing crowding in the halls might affect evacuations? Do you have a plan for, if everybody needs out all at once, do you have a plan for a safety?
Yeah, currently it's taken us about, I would say between about 5 to 6 minutes to evacuate the building, particularly the 2nd story. And I think that's just the fact that we have a 2nd story. Any building with a 2nd story is going to take longer to evacuate than buildings that are on ground level. We'll stand, sometimes when we run an evacuation drill, we'll stand at the tire tile and look at all our stairs, and they will empty out within 30 seconds to a minute of each other. So it's not like, depending on the period, it's not an issue of 40% of our kids are coming down by the band hall and they just can't get down the stairs that quickly. They're spreading out pretty quickly. My thought on that is I can't really think of a situation except for, an active crime in school where we have to get out, in like, I don't know the last time a school caught fire and the whole thing burned up in, in under 6 minutes. It's like, we can get them out before, in almost all of these situations, we can get them out in an orderly fashion, and that's what the fire marshal or anybody else would tell us anyway. Is take time and get them out orderly, don't let kids get trapped.
That's my concern, is the trampling.
Yeah.
You can't stand where the tiger tile is and not be concerned about trampling. And exercises are awesome. They need to take place. I appreciate the administration at all the high schools who do that. But a drill
Yeah.
and a real-time scenario are night and day.
Yeah.
And so, and that's where I get concerned. A drill, yeah, people are gonna wait for the person in front of them coming down the stairs.
Yeah.
When there's a reason to get out of this building right now, nobody waits. There's plenty of studies that show that people don't wait when they're panicked and wanting to exit a building. I like the idea of the one-way stairwells. I think that could help, as I just envision what I've witnessed. I think that could help some. And then, of course, in an evacuation, you divide the upstairs, because obviously in an evacuation, no one's coming up the stairs. So you don't need to just use the one stairwell. You divide the classrooms upstairs, and the north end uses the stairwell by the Civic, and the south end uses tiger tile stairwell type thing. And you're assigned, a stairwell unless one of them's blocked, of course. And use common sense, but by way of just regular class movement, I don't know, it'd be interesting to do a trial run to see how that would work, so kids can go upstairs, because where that tiger tile is, that's the biggest issue, because you got kids trying to come downstairs at the same time kids trying to go upstairs. That stairwell is 3 people wide, on average, the average person in it, and that's what ties up that area. It's not the only thing, but it's one of the major contributing reasons why that area gets so clogged.
I agree. It's because there's a T right above it too, and so, that's, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but, there's a huge percentage of our kids who go down those stairs. Disproportionate percentage of our kids go up or down those stairs during passing periods versus the other 3 stairwells that we have. And if we can figure out a way to change that so that it's more even, I think we would see some of that resolve.
Any estimate on a time to get from IF to the central building?
Oh, the 4 way. When they're on the bus.
Yeah.
Or loading the bus.
Everything. The bell rings, they're leaving their class to get on the bus to go to central.
I'd say 5 minutes travel time. There's not much.
So
in the
probably
way.
10 minutes overall.
10 minutes to get off. Yeah.
So would we
I
need
get
to
it.
lengthen passing periods?
Yeah, I mean, all of that would have to play in. It takes time to get there. It takes time to get back. How to use that option.
Can I ask Ralph a question? Good for us. How much is the high school buses integrated into elementary school buses? And I guess where I'm going with that is if we made the IF high school schedule 25 minutes longer, so we don't lose so much instructional time, because you're thinking you're going to lose 10 or 15 minutes instructional time for kids that are going back and forth. So if we added 20 minutes to the school day at IF high school and lengthen the in-between period classes, does that mess up your routing for elementary schools?
Not so much the elementary schools, it does for Sunnyside and Longfellow, but all of the students are also
With the IF kids. So start time and end time needs to be the same.
Well, in the AM, well, most of the PM is not as much, but only the AM.
Only the AM, so the PM something could be worked out. Not optimal, but doable.
And we have, I'm not sure the exact number, I can get it for you, but I'm gonna say between 100 and 200 students that finish their day sometime before 6th hour, anyway. So if you come into IF in the afternoon, passing periods look a lot different. So it might be a situation where, we're busing kids somewhere for 2 periods in the morning, and they get over there and they stay there for 2 periods. They do English and history or math and science, I don't know what it is, but that way they don't have to bus back and forth every time and then they come back and, I don't know that I would suggest lengthening the whole school day for that because the rest of the kids are, they can get to their classes. And I don't think we want them standing in the halls until the kids get to the other site necessarily. I think we want them to keep moving on a 5-minute passing period that works here. And then we'll work with teachers on the lost minutes here and there. And, you know, we do that with the teachers out in South Building in the West Stadium. They dismiss a couple minutes early. It's not the same as driving across town.
Remind us how many rooms there are. I'm forgetting. You had told us at one time, was it
Oh, I don't know.
12?
Oh,
12.
wait, rooms for where?
At
Central?
Central.
Oh, I don't
12.
know.
It's the same model as Emerson Elementary School. So the number of classrooms there, if you're thinking of a remodel, it's how it is that you would rebuild that structure and what it is that you would want to do with it.
Right.
So let's say, just for instance, that for example, it becomes a science center of some sort, and that's where you would teach some science classes. Those might look different than if we're just teaching English there. So one of the earlier proposals was to teach 100 kids over at CTEC, and could we take that space that's not being used right now and put an English classroom in there and have the kids flow in there? That's possible.
Which space at CTEC isn't being used?
Okay, so when you look at the building.
Is it that northeast corner?
East, it's the northeast corner, yeah.
There's only one or two empty built classrooms there, isn't there?
There would, southeast, there would be enough square footage in there to do two typical classrooms.
Now, southeast is where the nursing is.
Well, farther east.
That back.
We can do a tour.
More back in the back.
We didn't open that up for the regular ribbon cutting times and things that we did.
I mean, you make a good point, because one of my concerns here, I know it is with some others, is just our science rooms here. Like those chemistry rooms / labs, because it's the same room. I mean, there should be caution tape put on the outside of the doors and no one should be allowed in them. They're just a hazard.
Like there's this flat half, just not the stack.
Yeah. Well, yes. But yeah, to turn that into a science center would cost more money than to turn it into a language center with all of your English and foreign languages or a math center, because with science, you got all the labs and you'll need everything associated with the labs, the not gas, but what is it? Just the Bunsen burners, whatever they burn, and everything would have to be plumbed. It'd be a lot more expensive build out.
Yeah, fair.
But at the same time, that's what's needed.
So,
Just ideas, you know.
so Chris, I would assume of all the bad ideas that we don't want to have to do, that having kids go somewhere is going to be the least educationally and instructionally
intrusive
best way to do it than trying to change schedules, trying to, have off sessions, that if we had to focus on one of these, that something along the lines of whether it's adding modulars, which again, we don't think we can find, but using other facilities, using other classrooms, that would be where your recommendation would lead towards.
I think the least disruptive option is whatever keeps the largest number of students and teachers that we feel is safe here at IF at the same time, right? Split sessions cuts us in half, and that's gonna be the most disruptive. I think staggering some schedules is less disruptive than that. Maybe if we say, well, we really can, the school's built for 900, but we can handle, a class, when you talk about absences and things like that, we can handle 1,150 kids in the main building. How many do we need to put elsewhere? I think, and where do we put them? I think that's the conversation that I think we want to have over the next whatever months.
But if I'm hearing Mrs. Trudell correctly, if, say for example, we adopted the trimester schedule, if I heard her correctly, she's looking for a job in January. Did I hear you right?
I mean, I've had teachers come to me and say, teachers who have said, I thought I was gonna retire here, and some of them are.
But is that with split sessions or is that with any of these three options? I get the split sessions, although I actually had some teachers who were quite excited about split sessions depending on
Yeah.
which session they got.
Yeah.
They were pretty excited about it.
We haven't proposed all this or shown all of this. I did a brief in our faculty meeting, I did a brief overview of basically the trimester schedule starts, at 7:15 and ends at 2:10, and then you got the freshmen and sophomores who come in and they go a little later. So that was about the extent of the conversation that we had with most of our teachers, kind of in, waiting to have the board meeting. For the last couple months, I've scheduled after the board meeting, because split sessions and impacts here have come up, I've scheduled an optional faculty meeting after school to kind of explain what was discussed and hear questions. So I'm sure we'll hear some of that tomorrow afternoon. I don't know. I think we lose less in the trimester schedule than we do in the year-long schedule, but I don't lose any.
Do you see any kind of wave with the zero, adding the zero period? Does that seem to, or that's the one that has not been proposed to staff yet?
Yeah, I think part of where I guess part of the question that we want answered is what are we necessarily looking to do? If we're looking to resolve the issue at the Tiger Time, let us work on that problem and resolve that issue. If we're looking to resolve the issue of kids walking across the field, let us work on that problem. If we're looking to resolve all of that, but
right.
That's where up to this point, we really haven't been able to work on those specific issues of kind of what guidance the board wants to give us to. Hey, there is overcrowding, but it's only in certain areas and certain times in certain classes. So work on this, collect some data, figure out how you can make this flow well and give us a little bit of a, time to work through some things in the spring and know what we might do.
So realistically, if we could use Central and move a portion of the student body there, could we not shove them across the skating rink or the swimming pool or whatever we want to call the trench?
Depends how many I think it depends how many classes. We could do that now if we could get modulars and put them out front. Like we have 5 classrooms besides the auto shop, and we're not going to be able to do anything about the auto shop. The auto shop is there and it's just renovated and it's awesome. And so kids are going to walk across or drive. We have kids from other schools that come to the auto shop. So
that'll always be the exception.
Right. But we could fit at least 6 classrooms in front of the school in modulars, and that would replace the ones that we have across the field. It wouldn't replace the ones that are in modulars in back.
2 classrooms and 1 modular, right?
2 classrooms per module.
So you're thinking you can fit 3 modulars?
I think we could. And just looking at it, I haven't measured it, and I don't know.
I'd agree with 3 or 4.
But I think we could.
It'll be pretty.
It'd be tight, but I bet you could get 3 or 4. Angela, as soon.
Yes.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So that would be, if we're going down that route, that's the next.
Right, I'm just thinking if we can get everybody closer, or if we're moving them safely in a vehicle that's monitored,
Yeah, and I don't know if modulars on homes is safer than the back. I think.
There's definitely issues both ways, yeah.
Throughout schools, all throughout the country, there are schools where kids go outside to change classes and things like that.
Sure.
Most of them is in a drainage pit, but is there a solution where we can, put a boardwalk across so they don't have to walk through the drainage pit, or or a sidewalk on the side of it, because this is the route we're taking. I don't know the answers to that. We have worked on that problem, but, and,
I can tell you that,
fencing.
that one not gonna work. Come on, Dr. Powell, you know these kids better than that. You really think if there's a sign that's put on the fence that says walk this way and then turn left and go down the street sidewalk and then turn left again to get to the stadium versus there's this grass path straight in front of me that cuts off 100 yards from my walk?
No, I
That's when we send an administrator out there every passing
And they
period.
fence it off. If we wanted to go a different route, I think we fence off that grass patch because nobody needs to go that way.
Hey, Angela, do we still have, we have some ESSER funds, right?
Yes.
Do you know off the top of your head how
It
much?
depends on, we don't have the final bills on like the electrical, but we have set aside money for the bathroom renovations, so we could use that
Do
to
you remember
renovate
how much?
a different. I'm thinking anywhere between 1.5 and 2.5 million, but we'll know for sure once we get the final billings for the renovations that were completed, you know, recently. I'm
Is
trying to
that
think.
any additional ESSER funds besides what's been allocated for bathrooms?
So they're actually not ESSER funds, but the state is authorizing more funds for safety.
Yeah. I was just-
And
that-
that's new money, but also, Biden's infrastructure.
I was just gonna say, I heard something on the news yesterday that they included
Yeah,
something
and
for
there's
schools.
quite a few grants we've been looking at, if we're really specific, and, a lot of them are tied to HVAC though, which makes it hard because, but like your argument about the air quality above the auto shop, because they'll fund a structure if you ensure the air quality. So it's like, well, we could say, well, we want to put them here, but we can't, so will you fund the
Well, if we
structure?
wanna put them there and we need to put a HVAC.
Well,
Yeah,
kinda-
so renovating that one.
The thing I like about Central is, I mean, Dr. Shank, we've seen his report on his CTEC visit, and we all understand the potential of what CTEC can become. To meet that potential, it's not all gonna fit where it's at now. So I feel like if we renovated Central, it's not a waste of the patrons' money, because if down the road, the patrons do decide, like, the majority we do don't support it, but when 66 2/3 decide to support a new school, Central's doesn't need to be boarded up again, because we could just turn it into some of these additional CTEC classes that you showed us, the dental and there's dozens of options that we could put in there as well, or something else. But I feel like it wouldn't be a waste of patrons' money, that it would be used to expand IF's campus today. And then if IF ever does get a new high school, we convert it into some CTEC programs or to something else. You know, just a thought, thinking out loud.
Sure.
That's what this is about. Yeah.
Okay, I think,
Is there a way that we can tour that? I'd like to walk
yes,
through it.
just let me know.
So,
Get you in there.
okay.
I just want, for Dr. Powell and those that are watching, and as far as clarity, for clarity's sake, I think needs to be said that split sessions, at least for next year, are off the table. Are we okay to say that?
For me, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And I think that what we want to ask Dr. Powell is to kind of report out on these safety issues, these things that we've talked about tonight with the plan, on how it is to keep the students moving in a direction that helps facilitate the needs and the wants that we have here. I think
Yeah.
we're good to go with that, so.
Some old school hall monitors.
Yeah, or the dean of safety, somebody who's dedicated to that piece that will help ensure that the kids are moving in the right directions. And, you know, if we had somebody who was a dean level person to handle some of that safety, and then maybe they had some classified staff who worked with them to help make sure that kids are going the right directions when they're outside and that it's safe outside. I think we can do it with human resources instead of, you know, changing everything and.
Human casualty.
Yeah.
But I'd also like, I think that's great. But I'd also like to get feedback from your teachers too on the remaining two options, on the 0 hour and the trimester schedule. And I'd like to force some pros. I know just because it's different. So because it's different, there's automatic cons because it's different than what I've done my entire teaching career. But like I said, and I've said this before, and I looked around and every trustee nodded their head. The status quo can't continue. We got to do something. The problem's getting worse. Our environment is getting worse. You know, we worry about things today. School boards worry about things today that school boards 15 years ago didn't even have to, or even 5 years ago, it wasn't even a thought. Like, even if you raised it, it would be laughable. Like that would never happen. And now there are issues that are happening every day. So the status quo is not an option to just continue on and cross our fingers. We got to do something. So I know it's different, and anytime it's different, we automatically hate it. It's the human nature, but we got to look at options. We got to make tough decisions. So I would just ask that you get their feedback on that too.
I mean, I do think with the trimester schedule, there's pros and cons with or without a shifted schedule, with or without overcrowding. There's pros and cons to a trimester versus, you know, or a true trimester schedule versus the blended trimester that we're doing right now. So, but I think if we want to have those kinds of discussions, I would rather keep that in the what's best for education realm versus what's the solution to overcrowding realm. Because I think the solution to overcrowding, we definitely want to look at what's the least disruptive. And I don't see the crisis that we need to change everything about everything about the way we do business. We're not at that point. Might we be there soon? You know, when I look at without any more houses coming on, we're gonna go up by, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of another 120 between the next 2 years, 130 between the next 2 years. I mean, it's tight. It's tight. Our classes are big and it's tight, but we're doing a good job with it right now without seeing the objective safety concerns, you know, data that is objective that says we have real safety concerns, like fights or.
Yeah, I guess go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I took your status quo, meaning the schedule, the first through, you know, that, not necessarily that we weren't gonna do anything, but we weren't going to change the hours of the day, the class period times, maybe increase. So that's how I kind of took the status quo, but that we still needed to, you know, put kids here or there or tighten up those kinds of things. So maybe that helps with the.
Maybe.
And I like possibly add the 0 hour. I mean, potentially more options for kids. I don't know how many would want to come, but I know all families have different situations and some need to be home earlier with, you know, elementary school kids who are on an early schedule and it would work better for some families. And so.
Is that more planning time then for teachers, potentially?
Well, the teachers then probably would either teach 0 through 5 or 1 through 6. Depending on really their own family needs and trying to work through that.
So how would you assign teachers for that 0 hour then, since it would affect their schedules a lot? Would it be more like?
We would start with who wants it.
Who wants to?
And then be with it, yeah.
I actually think there would be quite a few who would want it personally.
I mean, it all just depends. I'm sure some want it and some don't.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some that don't too.
There's some who are definitely early risers and would be happy to be here that early and then, you know.
Yeah.
So you were.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's just perspective. You shared with us your perspective. You know, my perspective is I do feel anxiety.
Yeah.
I really do. I honestly don't know how you can look at the 400 kids crossing 150 yards every period and being okay with it or not feeling like there's any issues there. And looking at that chemistry room, when the person's sitting against the wall, needs to leave and you have to have, they can't until the other 5 people vacate the row. There's issues there. I mean, if I were you, I would have incredible anxiety every day praying that today's not the day that a tragedy happens.
Yeah.
Day to day, sure, we got through the day, it was okay. But in a building that doesn't have a fire suppression system, in a building that you have all these kids, 400 kids every period, traversing 150 yards, I'd have incredible anxiety every day.
Yeah.
Because if those kids are my responsibility, which they are, I couldn't feel good about that.
We do. I mean, teachers, educators, we worry about those things. We worry about things that, you know, I started teaching not, you know, I started teaching in '99, which was soon after Columbine. So my whole teaching career has been in the school shootings environment of the United States. And that's problematic, but it's hard to look at kids and say, I'm so terrified of what is happening that I'm going to destroy your opportunities for education right now. I would rather show up and, you know, we make decisions and we work hard on those kind of things and we lose sleep over it. So don't, and I don't want to come across, I think we don't need to go to split sessions. I think we don't need to, drastically change our bell schedules and things like that. I do think we have significantly outgrown this facility. And as a district, we need to plan for that and do something. And the growth is continuing, it's gonna continue. So I don't know those answers. I wanted the bond to pass as bad as everybody else. And I think every one of those kids did and all the teachers that are here and have been here. So we want that to happen, but we don't want to overreact to that.
So to me, it sounds like finding space is what we need to do. I mean, that and how to utilize it in the least.
I'll just say this because I'll take offense to that comment. It's never an overreaction until you have a Uvalde happen.
Yeah.
Okay, it's never an overreaction until you have a Columbine or a Sandy Hook or anything else. So I don't appreciate that comment.
No offense intended, sir. I'm sorry.
To call it an overreaction on what we're trying to solve and do. That's too bad.
Okay.
Time to take a quick break.
Yeah, let's take a break if that's
Yep.
possible. We've been sitting for
For
3 hours.
3+. Yep. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Can't believe you. You got
Where's your machine?
Hold of that. Next time we're in the bond, your own principal says you're overreacting. Think about what you're saying.
Drink all yours, you want mine?
That's your.
Came across different.
That's the board decision on that. I do make the deal, that is my.
Look at you.
It's on my show.
Now, it's preschool. All right, thanks everybody for bearing with us here tonight. I think we'll get started again. Dr. Shank with the boundary changes proposals.
Very good. As indicated in our last board meeting, we were to come back with some beginnings on studying what our maps might look like, and want to turn the time to Kelly Kokenauer. He's worked on this, as well as Ralph Frost, who's over here. So Kelly.
Thank you. So I'll refer to the kind of the long spreadsheet and then the map at the same time. At the top of the spreadsheet in the upper left-hand corner, that is how we're funded by classroom units from the state. And then on the upper right is kind of the max size that we like classes. We don't have a hard cap in our district, but we try to keep in those numbers. The reason I point those two numbers out is that's how I came up with the target enrollment range on each of the scenarios. So I'll kind of explain those as we go through. Scenario one, we looked at, let me take a step back. Our current enrollment in all the schools, if we compare those to the kind of that target range, there's really only two schools that are over that, and that's Longfellow and Sunnyside. So the first scenario, just looking at the south side of town and addressing Sunnyside. And so if you looked at their boundaries and you moved zones 3 and 4 from out of that zone to Egmont, that would shift 128 students. So then on my fourth column there, it says new enrollment with adjusted boundaries. The green highlighted boxes means they're underneath that target range. So there's still room in those schools. The white boxes mean they are inside that range, and then the red means that it's over. So with that scenario, the only school that would still remain outside of that as far as over that range would be Longfellow, and it's not significantly over. I think it's 14 or 15 students. The other thing on that one is that Sunnyside is currently a 4-by, so their range actually is would be 576 to 723, but I think ultimately we would want to get that to a 3-by, even though we can make it work as a 4-by because we have.
But it was built as a 3-by.
Yes, and then
with the 4-by addition.
Exactly. And then the problem having it as a 4-by is that, like lunchtime, for example, to get 675 kids through there, it takes 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. So you end up having a very long lunchtime, whereas a 3-by you can move through faster. Any questions on that one? And then it's the map that's super high-tech map with the marker. But there's those two zones are identified on that map. Some of the considerations when Ralph and I met, and I have to say, Ralph knows this city better than any human being I've ever talked to. But some of the zones are kind of out of consideration just because of the physical location and the busing requiring and the time schedules, and they wouldn't necessarily be able to be shifted. And then another thing is we tried to, keep segments that are already zoned together and not break up neighborhoods. Like we didn't split apart any zone at this time because we wanted to keep those units together. And then also proximity to the school.
How did you determine these units? Are these something that you made up, or are these?
No, that's a good question. These are the current boundaries. So this map right here, Dan said he'd be my assistant. Let me stand in the middle so you can see it.
No, I can see.
You can see it, so it's upside down. So that's not maybe this awesome map. That's all the current zones right now and where they actually physically go. So then we just looked at a section and looked at numbers and kept this section together. So zone, I can't see 4, kept that together and moved that.
Okay.
So all of the red, so for what we're seeing, all of the red was currently Sunnyside,
This is
and
the
you're
section.
talking that chunk, okay,
Yes.
color coded.
Going to Edgemont.
Yep. Any other questions about that one?
So I have a question, just in this scenario, since Longfellow's still in the red, and we do know that that north side is a high growth area, what would we look at doing there as far as, you know, new housing or something like that that comes in that 7, 8, 9 on the Longfellow side?
Yeah, so if that was one of the possible solutions, we would still probably implement our overflow system that we currently do.
So like.
And I don't know if we would ever be able to eliminate that totally, but.
Yeah.
And then scenario 2 is dealing with the north side of town. We're going to be taking zone 2 out of Temple View and moving that to Bush. So that would remove 63 students out of Temple View and add 53 students to Bush. And then again, you can see with the new enrollment numbers, you'd have 7 that would be under that target range, 3 schools that would be in the middle, and then you'd still have Sunnyside and Longfellow that would be over that range. Both of those are very simple. We started out simple and we get a little more complex.
And if either of those two could be combined.
Yeah, you
if
could.
we just wanna.
You could take any of these and absolutely.
Can I ask Kelly, just
Absolutely.
on your Temple View, I'm just wondering then why you put scenario 2 together, like, because Temple View is within your target enrollment. So you take the 63 students away. I mean, it definitely makes the situation better for that school, but I'm just wondering, with them starting in your target enrollment, why?
With all of that growth that.
Oh, you're seeing down the road.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
You bet. And then on the other side of the spreadsheet, scenario 3 involves a few more moves. So that would involve moving zone 3 and 4, which was in scenario 1, from Sunnyside to Edgemont. And again, that's 128 students. You would move zone 6 from Longfellow to Edgemont, which is 72 students. Move zone 4, which is currently Edgemont, and they'd move to Longfellow. One reason for that one is that is, sorry, I have to look at that again. One of the things we kind of looked at is just some of the old existing boundaries that kind of don't make a lot of sense. That one is.
It's that little box
right above.
In Longfellow number
Right-
7.
Right here, that's right in the middle of Longfellow. So this right now is zoned to Edgemont. So they passed several schools to get there. So that's just incorporating that into the Longfellow boundary. And then the last one would be moving zone 2 out of Edgemont to Bunker. So then when you calculate all those numbers, then you have new adjusted numbers there. And as you can see, there's no schools that are above that target range. And then we still have room in 5 schools roughly. And there's still room in some of them that are in the white too. It's just, they're in the middle range. Any questions about that one? Look at, if anyone wants to see where they are on the actual map. Okay to go to the next one?
Yes.
Okay. So scenario 4 involves 9 out of the 12 schools. Moving zone 5 from Bunker to Lennon Park, which is 48 students. Moving zone 2 from Temple View to Bush. Move zone 2 out of Bush to Hawthorne. Move zone 1 out of Longfellow to Hawthorne. Move zone 6 from Longfellow to Edgemont. Zone 4 from Edgemont to Longfellow. Zone 2 from Edgemont to Bunker. Zone 3 and 4 from Sunnyside to Edgemont. And zone 2, Longfellow to Fox Hollow. And when we calculate all those numbers, you can see that 9 of the schools are in that target zone, and then we have 3 that have some room in them. Again, Temple View is one of those, which would kind of still account for the growth on the north side, potential growth on the north side. And then Erickson with all the apartments and stuff being built in their area, that would take those. Edgemont, they are within the zone, but still have a lot of room. One area that, that's going to probably impact us is the area behind Home Depot. That is currently zoned to Edgemont, so we're gonna, Ralph pointed out a lot of those areas where there's growth that we should be able to accommodate those. For how long? I don't know.
So is it fair to characterize scenario number 4 as all the other scenarios plus more?
Yes, pretty much. Yep, yeah. And like I said, obviously, we did look at the 3 schools that one that we didn't even touch was Ethel Boys and Westside, for example. There really wasn't, it was almost you just be moving people to move people, so there wasn't necessarily an advantage there, the way the neighborhoods are kind of broken up already. So, yeah, but you could look at almost an endless number of scenarios. And like I said, we did not break up any current zones because you could actually look at a specific zone and say there's 128 kids in this zone. Can we break that into, 4 sections or 2 sections and split that up?
But then you have kids across the street that might be.
Right.
to different.
Yeah. So, any questions about it?
And that move to Edgemont, let me back up, re-ask it. There's kids that should go to Sunnyside that are going to other schools because of overflow, right?
Correct.
Do you know how many?
Yes.
Yeah. Depending on, if you remember where you placed that file.
I have to look at the spreadsheet that Ralph had.
And are they going to Bush?
Or do you know by chance, are they in zone, now I'm gonna have to put my glasses back on.
I think
Zone 78 and 50, which is the move to Edgemont. Are they in that zone?
Some
No.
would be just
some
because
could
of
be,
the growth.
but yeah.
There's some that live across the street from
necessarily.
Sunnyside that don't, because it's just a matter of if they
When
move
they
in
move
and
in.
fall,
Yeah,
there's no space.
exactly.
Yeah.
I see.
So currently, do you want to know just like in the Sunnyside zone, or do you want to know district wide as far as the overflows?
Sure, both.
Okay.
If you got it right there. I always have a great file system until I'm looking for the file. And then my
So
system's not so great.
we currently have West Side School has 7 kids that are being overflowed to Fox Hollow. Sunnyside has 8 students that are being overflowed to Longfellow. Longfellow has 2 kids that are being overflowed, 1 to Hawthorne, 1 to Edgemont. Linden Park has 5 kids being overflowed to Bunker. Hawthorne has 4 kids being overflowed to Erickson. Erickson has 11 students being overflowed to Bush and Linden Park. And then Boys has 5 kids being overflowed to Bush.
So the overflow is at the districts, because it kind of, it's funny to listen to you do that because we got 5 from A going to B, but then 6 from B going to C.
It's by grade, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also depending on where they live, so someone that lives in Sunnyside zone, they come to enroll in 5th grade and the 5th grade is full. Then we also, because we provide busing, so Ralph looks at where their house is and things like that as far as what school makes the most sense and what there's.
Do all of those overflows go away with this, or do we still honor those? How does that work?
And it's just year to year.
But like if I live within West Side and my kids are going to Fox Hollow because of overflow, after these changes, would they go to West Side now, or would they continue to go to Fox Hollow? Or would it be at the parent's choice?
Well, there's a process for that as well, but that's kind of hard for me to say without looking at each kid and the grade levels. I would say, just off the top of my head, I would say probably, because in scenario 4, there's no schools that would be over that cap. However, like when I say that, so Sunnyside right now is a good example because their fifth grade is actually over what we like. We have 4 fifth grades with 30 kids, and we don't like to go over 28. So after you moved kids out, maybe there was only 4 fifth graders involved in that move. So you're still above, if that makes sense.
Next year, sixth grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just it's like-
Follows them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I think there will always be overflows. There's always been since I've.
There is, and that's just because you have randomly have so many more kids in one grade level.
Yeah. For some reason on the south side of town this year, fifth grade was.
Very I would,
11
I
years
would
ago.
like to, I would also,
I'm a fifth grader.
Paul, I would mention that the state funding caps, or not caps, that he gave you, we get penalized if we go above. So some of trying to keep your grade size into a specific is a financial help to us. Now, where we can, if we don't have a room,
Right.
but they do penalize you for having larger class sizes compared to the state as an average.
So, thank you. Kelly, do you foresee, under our current situation of just only having the 12 elementary schools, that this is something we're gonna have to do every year based on how large different grade sizes are? Or are we gonna have to adjust? I know it needs to be looked at every year, but I'm assuming the answer would be yes, but I'm not an educator.
Yeah, it kind of depends too. So like that area behind Home Depot, how many doors are gonna be in that round? Wasn't it? Did you know? It's a lot. So anyway, it depends. I think the average that Cooperative Strategies used with us was roughly 1.2 kids per door. But we don't really have any idea if those are gonna be bringing in families, or are they gonna be, young
Elderly,
kids from the
yeah.
site that are, 24 years old and don't have a family. That's the part that's really hard. But my guess is that as the town continues to grow, this is gonna be
Apartments on
eventually.
Yeah.
It's a yearly exercise.
Yeah.
Apartments on Sunnyside?
Where the Monarch used to be.
Across from Cedar Ridge.
They tore down the Monarch and they're building
Oh,
apartments.
yeah.
And it's gonna be big.
Well, you got all those people I noticed are moving in to the ones just south of Taco Bell.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
those are being moved into now.
And the ones by Starbucks, by Jenny Lee, by that.
And I also noticed, all of those, you guys,
Broadway ones are all done.
that's what I was gonna say, the Broadway ones, what, just
Murphy's.
west, what the Papa Murphy's, west of Albertsons, in that same parking lot, people are moving into those now.
Yeah.
I guess I just mostly asked that question just to let patrons know
Right.
now that this is something that probably will happen every year, depending on the size of each grade. There might have to be adjustments made every year to our boundaries until we get a permanent solution.
Okay,
So-
so that's, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I had a question. If we went with scenario 4, does that reduce the chance that we have to do this next year?
Or you mean 24, 25?
Yeah, like the following school year.
Yeah.
I would assume so. I mean, obviously I can't totally predict it, but in my personal opinion, I think it would be a fix for a couple of years.
Okay.
But it's also the most
Disruptive?
I was gonna say destructive, but I knew that wasn't quite right. It could work, but it's also the most disruptive as
But
well.
maybe it's better to do a
But
whole bunch all at
Disruptive
once
ones versus
and then be good for a few years.
My thoughts are though, we still have a lot of balls in the air
Mhm.
as far as where we're going, what we're doing, bonds, levies, whatever it is. That like, if we can maybe do 1 and 2 and, get scenario 1 and 2, get down the road, maybe let things shake out for a year, 2 years, and then go, okay,
Yeah.
are we really for real never gonna be able to build a school? Then let's go to 4 and let's,
Yeah. No,
get
I
it done. But I think we
agree
have a
with
lot going. That would be my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of balls in the air that could change, and that's, yeah.
Reminder, this is just a beginning.
Yeah, what's your next step, Dr. Shank? Are you gonna throw this out in a survey and ask people? I mean, I can tell you already what the survey results are. People who it's impacted are gonna hate it, and people who aren't impacted probably won't respond to the survey.
So next steps is to begin to communicate more broadly with the community that we have some things that we're studying. We would seek some input, and that would begin around January. Again, we would not recommend a vote on this until April or May.
Would you like a consensus of the board where we would lean towards? So you, or are you wanting to present all four options?
I would say not yet. Yeah.
Okay, but like in January,
Yeah.
start. Okay.
Stupid, what you said.
Yeah. Give them all four options.
I do appreciate the work these two
Yes.
gentlemen have done.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that was great.
This is a lot of work.
And
Very clear.
Much
very
appreciated.
clear, very easy to read, and we appreciate that.
The maps are great.
On to new course proposals, and we have a quick little legend in our packet too. Questions, or we can have,
Yeah, this was placed on the agenda tonight, no approval till next month, to help you study these, refer to them. So there's no action item tonight.
Cause I had one question. It wasn't a deal breaker. I thought we were voting on this tonight. I mean, I know, I see it's not an action item, but just as I was looking through them, I thought Miss Cole's English one was interesting. Let me find it. That's HS, last page. I really like Miss Cole. She's a great teacher. My kids have had and do have her, so I know her. I guess I don't know her well. I've just interacted with her from a parent-teacher relationship and dealing with late homework and late assignments. Which Hillary doesn't know anything about because her son's perfect. I just thought it was interesting where it's
Taylor Swift?
yeah, the Taylor Swift comment. Yeah, the text will focus on works that Taylor Swift alludes to in her music.
There are college courses that.
Really?
Yep, that apply literature to her. So.
But now that I know we're not voting on it today,
Do some more research.
I'm gonna talk to Miss Cole and find out more about that. I'm just curious. It's not, like I say, it's not a deal breaker. I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah,
I read through these though, and there's some really neat classes. Some really neat opportunities for our high schoolers, in all of the high schools, like the forensics 1 and 2, and then send those guys up to Moscow and actually get something done.
Well, there's a good number. I think I counted 26. There's a lot of excitement there. Good number of C-Tech, Idaho Falls, all of them.
Yeah, they took interior design in IF and the nineties. Great. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to our team.
So will
for-
this be an action item next in January then?
January.
Is that the plan?
Okay, on to the consent agenda. Any comments or questions before we call for a motion?
I just wanted to comment that the matching funds for Dora Erickson seemed like a great idea, so they can do the same thing that Edgemont told us about in their report.
Have a motion to approve?
I'll move the consent agenda.
A second.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, on to our first action item. First reading, board policy revisions and review.
All right, very good. Policy 4110 at board request. We added some language regarding retaliation during a parent complaint process. This language that's proposed comes from the Equal Opportunity Commission. That's where I didn't make this up on my own. So that's the reference that's down below. In terms of what I did submit, that's not part of the EOC. It has to do with the 5-day timeline to respond to a retaliation complaint. And then also in terms of how we would go about finding, we would work through that with normal board policy due process type items for the individuals that we'd be working with. So that's my proposal in response to what was requested.
Yeah, so I'm the board member that asked Dr. Schenk to look into this. Probably no one's surprised by that, right? But there's for good reason, because after we put this forth several board meetings ago, I've had probably over 10 between both high schools, over 10 parents or people come up to me and tell me that they're grateful for it. And all 10 of them have told me about retaliation that they feel has happened to them or their child, which I personally think I've been retaliated against. I've shared that with Dr. Schenk and made him aware of it. And I think there's no call for it in our district. I think there should be zero tolerance for retaliation. We talked earlier about trust and how long it takes to earn trust and how it can be destroyed in seconds. And when we got coaches or administrators or whoever who are going to retaliate against a student or a parent who just has a concern, I think there's zero place for them in our district. And so I appreciate the wording that's been placed in here. I do have two concerns. One, if you think about the 5 days, I go to the coach or a teacher, let's just say coach. Coach has 5 days to respond to me. I'm not happy with the response, so I go to the athletic director. Now they have 5 days to respond to me, so now I'm 10 days into the issue. I don't like what the athletic director has to say, so I go to the principal and they have 5 days. Now I'm 15 days into the issue. And then I go to Dan and now I'm 20 days. And then I go to the superintendent and I'm 25 days. It's just by the time it needs to get resolved, and there's been issues that have gone to Dr. Schenk, we're aware of, to have it be a month later from the initial issue is a concern to me.
Is there a time frame that you would propose or that you think?
I mean,
would
they
make
need time
better
to,
sense?
I mean,
If it's a
Is there an
priority,
investigation
you don't,
that's
if it's a priority, you don't need 5 days, I think.
two?
I mean,
But that's my concern, is just you're 30 days in to an issue. Think of the issue that we dealt with. And think if that went on for 30 days. That was kind of scary.
But are we also worst case scenarioing it that they're gonna take the full 5 days? Maybe they'll respond.
Well, and that was one suggestion. I thought maybe up to in front of the 5 days.
That's what I figured it was. You had
Well,
5 days.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. but
say you
maybe it
have
needs
5
to be
days, well, and I think for
spoon-fed.
some people, yes.
I see.
For some of our administrators, I think they do need to be spoon fed. I think, but I still question even the number 5 days. And the only reason being, if it was just if it was like it's going to Dr. Schenk, I would say give it up to 5 days. But knowing that there's this multiple process, it just.
well, what if? I was gonna, never mind. No, that doesn't work. I was saying what if it's right before like the Christmas break, but I
School
mean, right,
days.
school
No,
days.
it says
It'd be
work
school
days.
days, work days, yeah. So that's not an issue. 5 does seem a little long, but
It's long if it goes through the process. It's not long. I agree. It's not long if it's dealing with one person.
That gets resolved. Okay.
But it's long if it goes through the process. Again, I just reference our issues that were,
is it possible to have like the initial response be 5 days? Because that would be like when any investigation presumably would take place or anything like initially and say what's going on here. And then the further ones are reduced.
well, I know of an issue that sat, and to my knowledge, is still just sitting on someone's desk that's been there for over a month. And to me, that's incredibly frustrating when it deals with a student and the well-being of a student. And if it impacts one student, it impacts other students potentially.
Well, that would
And
seem
for it to sit on an administrator's desk for a month minimum, probably longer, because I haven't heard anything back, then it's frustrating.
So need to weigh in on how long it should take.
Legal counsel?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what that is. So, I mean, that's part of it, the complaint. And is the process within that complaint an attempt to work it informally? Or are they wanting to go through formal process. That's part of the question I have. But weighing in on the number of days, I basically just follow the context of what's inside those boxes that are above this. So if 5 days is too many, I mean, sometimes it takes a bit to get through an investigation to look through whatever it is that's surrounding the problem. And you don't want to do it in a way that is rushed or haphazard, or you make
Agreed.
mistakes.
You don't want mistakes. Needs to be thorough.
There's a balance, I think, and I don't know what the day is, but the balance of my emergency doesn't necessarily always make it someone else's emergency, which, as we all know, when we're the one with the issue, you want it to be everyone's emergency, but I don't assume that something I give Dr. Shank necessarily is getting jumped on right away. If it's an athletic issue, he may take 5 days because he's got to run the district. But I would assume the athletic director, on the other hand, whose job is to address athletic stuff, would be on it much quicker. You know what I mean? So there's kind of a balance there of depending on what you're doing.
And legally, it's, the issue is this is, there's a due process requirement under the law, right? You have to have a due process. But as to what process is due, they rely upon you to make that decision. Then somebody can challenge that and say that's unconstitutional, my rights have been violated somehow. But you guys do have discretion to decide, is it 5 days, is it 3 days, is it, there's no guidance there. It's what process is due is up to you guys.
And that we follow it.
Right, and you follow.
Is 5 days too many in your legal opinion?
No, I think that's, that would be, actually, under the way lawyers and judges do things, I always kind of work on 7-day deals. So I think 5 would actually be short of what lawyers and judges might consider to be long enough, so.
And I have an idea, but I think it overcomplicates it because the investigation takes place at the initial phase, right? So maybe you need more time to investigate that. But if it's going to go to the AD or go to the principal, I don't think they need 5 days.
So have levels?
That's kind of what I was thinking. That's why I say then is it overcomplicated? I don't want to overcomplicate. I just wish people would address things when they get it, but they don't. So then we have to address it.
Yeah, and so
It's
that was
frustrating.
my question was like, when you were talking about something sitting on a desk for 30 days, we do have in here that if it's a formal complaint, if it's non-formal, that's a totally different ball of wax. But if it's formal, if someone hasn't got a response in the time frame, they then can escalate to the next level, correct?
That's the way I see it. To formalize a complaint, that you want to work through it by filling out that form and signing it. This is how it is that I would like this addressed, rather than working through an informal process that doesn't necessarily have a time frame to it. And like I said, I don't know the context of the one that's sitting.
Right.
That's sitting. Right. Yeah.
Specifics.
So if I'm getting the retaliation complaint, I'm going back and I'm looking at also the original complaint. What happened here? What was it? What was the cause for this person to complain to begin with, and then look at what was the action that was taken that was retaliatory. Probably looking at both at my level.
I don't know, like I said, I don't know what the answer is. It just, to me, 5 days is might be necessary in the first phase, but to know that could turn into as many as 35 days and think of it as working days. So 7 weeks after an issue, to me, that's not acceptable.
Sure, it's long. So we need to figure out, I guess, a different time frame.
And then the second part, I don't want to leave part A, but like I said, I mean, personally, I would love for this to talk about, and again, it's over trust. If we're going to have someone retaliate, I just don't think they belong. If it's a coach, I don't think they should be coaching. Coaching and teaching are two different things, unless the kid's in their class and they want to retaliate on the kid now and academically, and then we address that. But I think if a coach retaliates, I just don't think they should be coaching in our district. I think they've lost the trust of the parents. They've lost my trust if you're going to retaliate. And I don't think they should be coaching, and I think we should make that clear. I think if you're going to retaliate, you don't belong in District 91. How can we tolerate that?
Do you see that as policy or procedure?
I don't know. I could argue both sides of it if you told me to take one. Does that surprise you, Hillary? I know, I'm joking with you. Hillary and I have spent a lot of time together.
I think once you go to taking away someone's livelihood for that.
I don't think
that's-
coaching in districts, anyone's livelihood, they get paid
Well,
nothing.
It's still considered a property, right? So to take that away, you do have to have notice and a hearing and all that. So I think to just say it's a policy of the board that in District 91 that if you retaliate, you're not going to be allowed to keep coaching. I think they still get a right to hearing about that. So you'd have to add that into that process.
So could you just add they have the right to a hearing to defend why they chose to retaliate against a child or a parent?
A notice and a
I'd
hearing
love to hear that explanation.
to hear the evidence against them now. So.
Wouldn't that be under like a due process policy?
Yeah,
It would just be
if,
referenced under our.
if action's going to be taken against their employment, there needs to be a due process that's fair. And regardless if it's within the complaint or even the retaliation, it's important that the board not predetermine outcomes to something that there's been no due process accorded.
Well, right, I mean, that would only happen if we found that the retaliation did take place.
At
It
that
wouldn't be
point, then,
based off of a,
if that's factual, then supervisor or whoever's over that person needs to make a determination whether or not they're going to retain their employment.
okay, well, that's where I get concerned because there's the good old boys club. And I can give you many examples of that. Of where they just look out for each other. And then it's the parent or the student that loses. And that's why we don't get feedback from them. That's why they won't come forward and talk. And you personally heard examples of that.
Well, we can't talk examples here, so.
Oh, I know. That's why I didn't give examples. I'm just saying it's not speculative. There's examples of it taking place.
And in terms of policy and working the issue through procedure, that's why it's important to get it right. And try to
I
make
wish
sure
we
that
just had
both
administrators that
sides-
did their job.
Oh, let's not go there. I don't actually see the 5-day timeline applying to anything except the initial response from the building principal. And then to the initial complaint of the type of the any claims of retaliation. But it says it doesn't have a timeline for when it can be brought to the superintendent. It says if the patron believes the matter was not resolved at the school level, it may then be brought in writing to the superintendent. It doesn't have a timeline there. And then if it's not resolved there, it says it may then be brought before the Board of Trustees. And it needs to be brought to the board 5 days before the regularly scheduled board meeting, which makes sense because we have to get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I guess I made the assumption that the 5 days applied to each level.
But I don't see that.
And
And
that
then there's
might
the
be an omission.
24-hour rule for athletes, but
Which is a good rule.
is it?
That's a good
Cool down.
two-way, yeah, for both sides.
Okay. But I don't see anywhere that it says it applies to anywhere except that when the complaint goes to the principal, when the student files the complaint with the building principal, then they can expect to hear back within 5 work days.
Okay, so under type of complaint personnel,
Okay.
administrative supervisor responsibility document using policy F4110F, a conference log entry and power school and acknowledge receipt of the complaint within 5 work days.
Okay.
Investigate as needed, arrange meeting with personnel and communicate findings and or decision to the patron as appropriate. And then the paragraph that's under that one, staff member responsibility speaks to what's occurring there. Student, let's see.
Supervisor
Supervisor.
responsibility.
Yes. So, if we've omitted one somewhere, the intent is to handle it within 5 days throughout the policy and the procedure. I don't have any problem adding that to something. But going back to your point of 35 days, that is a long time to wait, 35 working days. I just need, I guess, we just need to figure it out, what's better and how to go about it. The 5 days, for instance, if it comes to my office, I'm probably going to take 5 days because I'm going to have to go back and rework the problem and see what the issue is. It might take a couple days to be able to do that. That's dependent upon schedule. That's dependent upon being able to access the complainant, any witnesses to that complaint, talking with personnel that are involved with that. It may take 5 days.
And what if you were out of town when the complaint was filed with your office?
All of that applies. Yeah, illness, these sorts of things. But I don't disagree. 35 days, if you're involved in something yourself that you've initiated, that's a difficult thing.
So maybe 5 days is necessary, but I would just ask maybe we put in the language, the up to 5 days, because what it just reads, the same 5 workday timeline, kind of makes it sound like I don't need to deal with this for 4 days because I have 5 days to get it done. So I'll worry about it in 4 days from now.
Yeah. The other piece is sometimes with items of concern and complaint, you can resolve quickly. If it comes to me, you can resolve it. You don't need to take the 5 days.
Yeah.
It just depends. It depends on the severity of what the issue is.
Could it say something like, as expediently as possible, but no longer than 5 days?
We could say that.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
I think that's good, Hillary.
Yeah, good job. Okay.
Yeah, why don't we make that suggestion, and I'm
And
comfortable with
replace
that.
those with-
All right. Do you have that? Thank you.
So then do we table or motion with,
Well, there wouldn't be a
With
motion, was
suggested
there?
language.
This is just a first
This is just a
reading.
first
This is just a
reading.
first reading.
So we could move to approve this with the suggested language change.
anybody prepared with that motion?
Sounds like Larry is.
Sure, I make a motion to approve the first reading of board policy, revision and review of section 4110 public complaints. And also to include the revised language.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, second and final reading. I should probably put my glasses on. Reading of board policies. We cleaned up some of that language too. Any other questions or discussion on these policies?
We didn't make any changes last time, right? It was just the original one.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So just moving it forward so we could get to the second reading. So
Yep.
they come. So anybody prepared with a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the second and final reading of section 3085, sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation policy. 3085P, sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation policy. 5240, sexual harassment, sexual intimidation in the workplace policy.
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? State graduation math requirement.
Okay. Chris, as the leader of the task force here.
Yeah, so you guys have the report from the task force. So just to describe briefly what we did, we came with a recommendation, I believe it was September, maybe October, to align with the state and not require math the senior year. You asked us to go back with the task force, gain feedback. And so Lisa Armstrong and I actually went out and met, or some of the groups actually met without us and gave us their feedback, but we met with all of the high school math teachers, except Emerson, but they have a different graduation requirement. So they didn't provide feedback on this, but everyone else did. All of the math teachers, all the high school counselors, and all the high school principals all provided feedback. And then we took that feedback and we took it to the District Curriculum Advisory Council committee that has parents on that and asked them for their feedback as well. And you have that feedback. The vast consensus, what everyone felt like was best for students and their options was to align with the state and not require that math the senior year, stay with the same number of credits that we require. they're not required to senior year. And I'd be happy to go into any more detail on that if you haven't had a chance to read it or answer any questions yet.
Questions for Chris?
No, I appreciate, there was some really good feedback. I thought the teachers and the counselors, especially the counselors, which I think you would expect just because they're the ones that are dealing with these kids and stuff, made some really good points on both sides. We'll be honest, I'm disappointed in the principals. I know that our graduation rate is down. And I know that they've been tasked by the board and specifically Dr. Shank to get that up, which we should be, but just, when they didn't fulfill, just like when there's no cons, there's not a single con for the pros and cons of removing the graduation requirement, and there's not a single pro for requiring students to take 4 years of math in order to. Everyone has pros and cons. The teachers and counselors did it. Anyway, I was just disappointed that it wasn't fulfilled, that they didn't do both sides. But there's some really interesting feedback, especially from the counselors. If you didn't get a chance to read it, I would definitely read the counselors' feedback, some good feedback from teachers too. So I would agree with the proposal personally.
We recommend approval.
Anyone prepared with a motion?
I will move that we approve the state graduation math requirement.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris, because that was a lot of work, and I appreciate you meeting with those guys and getting that. That was, when we first talked about it, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer to do a fourth math requirement. Just, I know it's not fun and kids wouldn't like it, but it'd be better for them. But after reading some of the feedback from your work, it made me think again.
Yeah.
So thanks for putting that together.
Thank you. Right,
Okay.
Bechtel Online School.
I'd like to introduce a gentleman in the back to the Board of Trustees. This is Cody Claver, and it looks like we have, do you want to introduce Scott Anderson? Okay, and these are representatives from Excel. And we've been studying our online program in the school district and have felt and are recommending to the board that there's a bug flying around.
Yeah,
That's what I'm doing, sorry. And recommend that we contract with a management program. And Excel is the one that we've been discussing. We've had a legal counsel review and vet this contract. Our district administration team has as well, and we're recommending approval. And we feel that it would be a great opportunity for us to be able to improve our online program as well as sustain it through time. And if you'd like, I think you're welcome to ask any questions of Cody or Mr. Anderson that you might about the program, but we feel that it's a great opportunity.
I have questions.
Okay.
Okay.
We got some comments from patrons about concerns about doing this, and I would like to hear some more rationale for why we're doing this and what the benefits to the people who are currently in that school will.
Sure. One major consideration is sustainability. The program started and when it was initiated, a much larger school enrollment than we have now. We have 7, I believe, staff members serving a cadre of 50 kids. That's not sustainable for us to be able to do so financially. Another is we like to think that it's a program that we would like to grow, have more opportunity. Excel is a great system that does that. It provides opportunities for kids to be able to come in from all over the state rather than just in our district. So there's chances there that this program would grow. Another thing is they do it very well. We've talked to them. We discussed the type of program that they would be able to offer, and we think that they would do it in a great way. I believe that management is necessary and needed in this particular program. It's something that I think we can do better at.
They're the experts.
They're the experts.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one of the big mistakes companies often make is, say you're a skincare company and you got now thousands and thousands of customers, and so you're thinking you want to expand, and like, we got all these thousands of customers buying from us, and so we should expand and do clothing. But you don't know clothing, you know skincare, but companies still do it, and they end up going out of business, or they sink fast because they're not a clothing business and they go back to skincare. And I just look at our job one, and it's not online education. It's not their specialty. And so if you remember, we started all of this with the lovely COVID years, and I think we bought 1,000 licenses, and we thought that 1,000 wasn't going to be enough. And then if I remember right, we stopped around the 900 mark, give or take, that we ended up using, and we've gone from 900 to 50. And yeah, if we have 7 resources assigned to 50 kids, that's pretty expensive, and I don't think it is sustainable, and it's not our job one. It's not our forte. So turn it over to people who it is their forte. We partner with them. I'm with you, Elizabeth, on some of the questions, but I talked to Dr. Shank too, because it's interesting. They asked about, well, is it still going to be D91 curriculum? It's not D91 curriculum today. It's the state of Florida curriculum, because that's who we contracted with. And so some of those concerns aren't even valid for what's going on today. And so I think it is a good move to partner with people who this is what they do. They're experts at it. We're not. And so like I said earlier, anytime there's change, we all get nervous. You just hear of change and we freeze. It's our human nature. How is this going to impact me? How is this going to impact my child, my family? I think if people will give it a shot, I think they'll be just as happier with it than what they have today. The only concerns I have is with the contract. To lock in 5 years from day one, if there is a problem, to be stuck 5 years. I don't know if you tried to negotiate that at all, or if that's a negotiation point. Did you have the same question, Laura?
I believe.
And then the 10-year extension seems like that seems long to be locked in for 10 years following the 5 years.
I think it's still a cost savings of the 7 staff members that we.
It's all based upon the number of FTE. So for instance, let's say we drop another 50% in FTE the next year, or people don't enroll. The opportunity to do business with Excel, I think, evaporates on its own. And so they might want out of the contract. We might go to the table and negotiate something different because it's not working. And I would think that would be possible. Would it not be?
Absolutely.
Yeah. When I read that language,
5 years for the start.
Yeah. I see it as not necessarily a lockdown for 5 years if it's not working.
Are you sure?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right then.
Yeah. It's in their interest to make it work. It's in our interest to have them make it work.
And we will still have an option for students.
Correct.
Just like when we
Oh, yeah.
had to pivot and have the online option.
So this will hopefully make it more likely that we can continue to offer this option for students in the future.
That's what I see it as, and it's a great point, Elizabeth. I mean, at some point, we as administrators of the district have to look at a program that's diminishing. And is it time to close it, or is it time to strengthen it? And that was a question we asked ourselves.
Yeah. I had a question about the contract. We're agreeing to arbitration and not anything else. I guess I'm concerned about that. I'm not exactly sure what I'm asking, but I'm concerned.
Arbitration is pretty common today when you have disputes. Courts are messy and slow, and it's very common in business to go to arbitration instead of trying to battle it out in courts.
I agree.
And the Supreme Court has upheld arbitration. So people have challenged it. And it is kind of the way it's going to go. So I know it's tough because a lot of judges have fought against it too and complained about it. So you're taking this out of the time honored way of doing things, but the Supreme Court said that that's what's going on. So,
May I add one other thing? Mr. Claver, stand up, will you please? He is not a stranger to the district.
Yeah.
Would you just kind of share some of your experience?
Yeah, thank you for having us here tonight. Well, it was interesting to listen to the Idaho Falls discussion. I was the assistant principal here 23 years ago. It seemed like we had the same problem with the tiger. Yeah, so it's interesting to hear that similar conversation. We had a pretty crowded school at that time too, a lot of kids, a lot of back and forth between the stadium. So I'm familiar with those. Yeah, I mean, my experience was as a teacher and principal, assistant principal in this district, and then in 2004, I was afforded the opportunity to become the head of school for the Idaho Virtual Academy. I served in that capacity for 5 years. At that time, I worked for the company K-12 Inc. And then from there, my wife and I had an opportunity to move with K-12 to operate a private online school in the Middle East in Dubai. That's where we lived for the last 10 years. We just moved back in June with the same company. While we were gone, the K-12 founder left K-12, started a new company, Excel Schools is part of that company, and we were part of that transition in Dubai. So we came back this year we were ready for a transition ourselves. 10 years is a long time. And this is, the US is our home. So we came back, and that's kind of been my experience with online education. I've been in online education now for 18 years. It's just mind-boggling to think that it's gone that long. I can tell you that our company, knowing that our founder is really kind of where online education started. Ron Packer, if you look him up, he's really founded, and that's where it just started. And so we think that we've learned some lessons from K-12, and that our system now is even better. So not better than K-12, but we've made improvements.
Are you here local now? Are you back to East Idaho?
I'm not in East Idaho. So, part of living in Dubai was getting used to warm weather. Moved back to Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, good for you.
But I do still do own a place in McCall, so we still do have Idaho kids. And I have 2 children, little older children that still live in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
And I've been blessed to work with Jim and with Kelly in the past, and know Dan for a while as well. So, really thankful that, we just opened up a conversation, and I think the timing happened to be right. So.
Thank you.
Any questions for Scott?
Are your questions, are you comfortable, or do you still
My
have?
questions have been answered.
My take from reading thank you. From the feedback that we received is they think that we run the program today. And I would love to talk to them. I wish they were here. Or I'd call them to say, do you realize that it's not even our program? It's the state of Florida.
We're facilitating it.
Yeah, we're just facilitating. We continue to facilitate it tomorrow. Nothing's changing that way. So it's just what the administration believes to be a better partner for where
Keeps it as an
they
option.
take it, keeps it as an option.
Right.
Could
Otherwise,
just
there
face like
may
you said.
not be an online option.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's better than
Better than nothing.
And just to make sure I'm giving you guys good advice, did you guys negotiate the percentage?
We did.
Did you come up with the final? What was the final? I never.
96.5 management fee.
Okay.
So 4.5% is returned to the district, all based upon FTE. So the number of kids that we currently have, if that's what was enrolled in the fall, that's how that look. If it were to grow, what was returned to the district would grow.
So I look at it as kind of a low risk to us, and it's all up to them to get it to succeed, and then we just get, extra money from it. So that's how I read the contract.
Yeah.
You know, from an overcrowding perspective, I hope they're incredibly successful. Seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just, is one of the options is how many kids can we push to online if that's a better learning environment. Some kids learn better with Compass. Some kids learn better online on their own, and we should find all those kids and we should push them that direction if that's what's best for them.
And we're keeping it as an option for people who learn best that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Very
is
good.
that satisfactory?
Yes, anybody prepared with a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the private provider online school contract with Excel Online West.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Before we adjourn, and I'm not asking to go back, but there was a really good idea. I was looking at my notes because I had 3 questions for this discussion, and I realized I had a comment when I was reviewing the math curriculum. And so I'm not saying we go back at all, but just if you would consider or be willing to consider, one of the teachers suggested a high academic standard seal, that if someone took 4 years of math, in addition to their diploma, they received what they called a high academic standard seal. I don't know if that was made up or if there's actually a nationwide seal for someone who excels or it's mathematics. But it's kind of the carrot approach to taking 4 years of math instead of the stick. You must take 4 years of math. That was kind of where I was headed with the stick approach. I didn't think of it that way, but when I read this idea, that's what it was. And this is a carrot approach. And so to someone distinguish their diploma with high academic standard seal, I think would be a great idea to acknowledge those who did take 4 years of math. But I realize that discussion should have taken place before the vote, and I just felt a bit if it's something you would have
We can take it on as
looking
assignment.
into.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, we have some other proposals with diploma seals as well. Chris is going to be talking about that soon.
There was something in the IF newsletter and I was like, I didn't hear about that already.
It's immature.
Okay, and do we
That
have,
was it for me.
thank you, Paul. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
Sure, you want to.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
No,
All
we're
those
already
in
at
favor say aye.
Aye.
4.5 hours.
Meeting of the year, right
All
here.
right, thank you, everybody.
It's not 11, it could be worse.